It's an explanation.
We are now live, not humble or anything, so, we're ready? All right. Good afternoon, it is 5:03 on October 1st, 2024, and the State Board of Education working session for today is now called to order. This month's working session is being held in person at the Marion Square Junior meeting. However, in-person attendance is limited to State Board members, staff, and guests. The working session is also being streamed live on the State Board YouTube page for members of the public. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Executive Director Butler, I believe the team to call the roll.
Representative Barnes,
Present.
Representative Lynn, Representative Mayor, Representative Ting, Representative Best,
Present.
Representative Chang,
Present.
Representative Goulet,
Present.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative O'Leary,
Here.
Representative Reed,
Present.
Representative Williams, Representative Patterson, Representative Thompson.
Present.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
A quorum has been determined and the State Board will now proceed with the meeting. Again, welcome to our October working session. At this time, I'm going to recap the leadership report. A few things that the board should note, it's mostly updates and thank yous. I think we have nothing but good news this week. So first, in case you were already in bed late last night, the WTU did reach a tentative agreement with the chancellor and the mayor's office. They have said thank you to the state board for their support. And so I want to make sure I share that thank you with the members if you haven't seen it already. Next, we've been in communication with OSSE, DCPS, and the Charter Association regarding planning some school visits over the course of this school year. We have passed a lot of things as this board, everything, financial literacy standards, SEL, we got addendums to health, there's a lot going on. And members have discussed and expressed interest in implementation. And so we are going to work to go see implementation. If you have thoughts about specific schools that come to mind that you would like us to consider for visits, you can just respond to my email with no dates or anything has been set, but we do want to get a wide swath over the course of this school year. Teacher appreciation. I just wanted to say thank you again to the Ariel Atkins Foundation, Liz Foundation, members of Washington Mystics that came out, and especially the FBOE staff for making our second teacher appreciation a successful one. We were able to celebrate Moulton Elementary this year. Last year we did Drew and give 15,000 in school supplies as in addition to gift cards for all the educators. Because we've been successful 2 years in a row, we're looking out for year 3 next year. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited for them. And yeah, and thank you to everybody who made that happen. If you have not seen it already, thanks already for members who have chimed in. But Director Butler sent a message to members earlier today asking for contribution for snacks for the FAC meeting. We do have a growing committee, which is now 90 students, which is more than we ever had. And they are also growing people because they are students, so we try to keep them fed. I do want to thank the staff who have provided snacks in the past. But now that we're, getting a bit bigger, we appreciate any other donations. Please follow up directly with Director Butler if you have not already. Also on the list to follow up with Director Butler, an email was sent out soliciting topics and suggestions. You have until Friday to respond back with that. Please do include Director Butler, myself, and Vice President Patterson on those emails. Last, I am so glad that the board unanimously approved the resolution and accompanying legislation on the nurses contract. But we've had a couple of different, ways, I would say, that legislation has come out of the board. And one of the things that we did not cover in our standard operating procedures is like, what does that look like? And so I've asked the staff to take a first crack and present it to the board at the next working session around some standard operating procedures, just to standardize how we get from a place of idea to we are sending legislation to council. We don't have anything yet, but given that's look different for seizure safe schools, governance, the nurses contract, I can go on and on. We want to make sure that we're taking the best of all of those processes and putting them into a standard procedure. So look forward to something at our next working session for the board to discuss. If you have any ideas, we welcome those as well. That is it for my leadership report. Are there any questions? All right. At this time then, I will turn to Executive Director Butler for her report.
Good evening, members of the DC State Board. Over the past month, the team has hosted the board's first hybrid public meeting, successfully executed the literacy mix for kindergarten teachers alongside our education cluster partners and entities, and celebrated local educators with our second annual teacher appreciation event in partnership with the Licks Foundations, the Ariel Atkins Foundation, and Washington Mystic. The SBO team also kicked off our largest ever student advisory committee, welcoming over 90 high school students representing all 8 wards. And I want to thank the entire SBO team for their hard work, long hours, and dedication, which made each of these endeavors successful. Last month, I also launched a monthly reminders and update emails to members. Please share any agenda items for our upcoming meetings with us and the deputy mayor as soon as possible, as the deadline was yesterday, August 30th. Please take a few minutes to complete the FY26 Education Budget Priority Survey by this Friday, October 4th. We aim to share this with the mayor's budget team before December 1st. If you haven't responded to my update email with your thoughts on the fall hearings, you would like the board to provide official testimony, please do so that we can use that at the time to prepare. We are so excited to have 5 state board members join us later this month at the National Association for State Boards of Education's annual conference in Louisville, Kentucky. We will host a free conference call to discuss reimbursement and a DC night dinner arrangements. Please check your inboxes. As we kick off the new fiscal year today, each member's constituent engagement fund have been replenished. If you would like to use those funds for constituent engagement, please email Javon Marshall and Roma Battle. In October, SBOE will hold an agency-wide meeting to share updates and do cross-office strategizing and team building. And to kick off employee performance reviews and begin the FY26 budget planning process. We hope to finalize our site plan for our office renovation later this month and start the hiring process for our agency only HRFT. President Thompson, that is my report.
Any questions? I then am coming to the office. I'm going to turn over the next 45 minutes to Interim Superintendent Mitchell and also to share next steps for district-wide graduate profile and health and PE standards. Dr. Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to see you all again. Thank you so much for inviting us to your working session. We're looking forward to 2 topics this evening. First, our health physical education standards. And we have 2 members from our health and wellness division. We have the leader of the Division of Health and Wellness at OSSI, Ms. Tia Brumstead. She's the assistant superintendent for that division, and we're looking forward to hearing from her, as well as Jessica Duncan, who works in the Division of Health and Wellness, and they will be sharing new standards for health, for physical education. In addition to that, we will be providing an update on the graduate profile. We were here, month, 2 months ago, to share that profile with you. We've done some additional engagement, and Dr. Shamir Jones, who's in the Division of Post-Secondary and Career Education at OSSI, will share the updates with you. We are happy to answer any questions that you have, and I think that we're just ready to jump right into the PowerPoint. So what we would like to do over the course of this discussion is three basic things. We want to align on the need for health and physical education standards. We'd like your feedback on those standards, and we'd like to just align a little bit on the final version of the graduate profile. Share with you some of the feedback that we've received, and we're looking forward to the discussion. Thank you. So.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us at your working session this evening. So I will kick us off with just giving everyone an overview of our initial steps and processes as we launch into looking at revising our DC health and physical education standards. To set some foundation and context for this, I'll start with a review of Shape America and our national health and physical education standards. So Shape America, which stands for the Society for Health and Physical Educators, is a national best practice leader in health and PE. They serve as the voice for more than 200,000 health and PE professionals. They represent across all 50 states as well as DC. Shape America has set the national PE standards for decades, and then in 2010, they acquired the copyrights to the national health education standards. Earlier this year, in March of 2024, they released revised national standards at their annual conference. Prior to the 2024 updates, the National Physical Education Standards were last revised in 2013, and the National Health Education Standards in 2007. Then along with about 3,000 other individuals across the country, OSCE, as well as teachers from DPPS and public charter schools attended their conference so that we could participate in deep dive sessions on their revised national standards and really learn about the revisions that took place from national experts. Since these standards are national best practice, DC has historically adopted these strands, and then the standards themselves do undergo some local revisions to ensure relevance to DC, appropriate reflection of student need, and any inclusion of any requirements for DC legislation. I'll also quickly note here that the CDC does also align their robust health and physical education resources to the national health and physical education standards. An example of this at the CDC would be their health education curriculum and analysis tools, or their HECAT, and their physical education curriculum and analysis tools, or their PCAT. These are really useful tools for our LAs in schools to be able to conduct analysis of health and physical education curricula, so they can select curricula that are then in line with standards. These standards are also used in health educator and PE teacher programs across the country within their curricula to align to. Next slide, please. Thank you. A little bit more about the revision process that Shape used. So they followed a multi-year revision process in order to provide a comprehensive framework that supports the health and PE teachers deliver high-quality, skills-based instruction. So they launched two revision task force, one for each set of standards in 2021. Each task force included K-12 educators, representatives from advocacy organizations, and institutions of higher education. The national PE standards went through 3 rounds of national public review and comment. So they did this in April 2022, March 2023, and August 2023. The national education standards went through 2 rounds of public comment, review and public comment in March 2023 and September 2023. As DC educators are really active in Shape, they're active members of Shape, they were able to participate in this review process. And then as part of this release of the standards earlier this year, throughout this year, as we launch into the school year, Shape also continues to release additional tools and resources to support states and local education agencies and schools and the teachers in really being able to implement these standards to fidelity with national best practices. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now I'll do a little bit more review of each set of standards, so our PE standards and our national health education. So to start with the PE standards, our DC standards, our DC PE standards were last revised in 2017. These were based on the national PE 2013 standards. As these are crafted by the foremost physical education experts in the country, DC has historically adopted these as written. For this reason, and given the rigor to which the 2024 standards were reviewed, we do intend to follow this decision-making and expect to submit the national PE standards with minimal revision for public comment. What you will see in the table on the screen here are the strands that were revised in the 2024 national PE standards. Within each of these strands, the standards are organized and progressed by grade band to identify the content and skills a student should know and be able to demonstrate. Next slide, please. Thank you. OSSE will review these standards to identify if there's any instances where clarity for DC context or revisions for DC legislation may be necessary. The draft of these standards we will send for review for external subject matter experts, and then we'll submit these for public comment at the same time of the draft health education standards. We anticipate to draw experts from the Council for Exceptional Children, DCPS, University of Maryland, and public charter school as well. Next slide, please. I'll shift over to our health education standards. Thank you. So our 2016 health education standards are aligned to the 2007 National Health Education Standards. We have historically adopted the National Health Education strands as written, and then we make adjustments within the grade band standards to really ensure relevancy to the DC context. Again, similar with the national PE, given the rigor to which the health education standards were reviewed, we do intend to keep with this process. And then again, similarly, what you'll see in the table on the screen are those 8 strands of the National Health Education Standards. And then similarly with the national PE standards, these standards are then organized by grade band to identify the content and skills a student should know and be able to demonstrate at the end of each grade band. Thank you. Our vision for revising our health education standards is one we definitely want to lean into, that our current 2016 standards are robust. So our revisions really focus on making sure we're bringing the standards up with local needs, that they align with best practices, that we maintain our current health education standard category areas, which you'll see on the screen here, of mental and emotional health, safety skills, human body and personal health, disease prevention, nutrition, and alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. We want to integrate the 2023 mental health standards into these, and then really make sure we're increasing the rigor of the standards and looking at the continuity across all of the grade bands. Yeah. So some of the progress and steps we are progress to date and steps we're currently active in. We've conducted a 50-state scan to review other states' approach to the health education standards. We've held 4 focus groups for early conversations around our health topic areas with DC educators and community-based organizations. And we've also held meetings with our DC government agencies, subject matter experts, as listed on the slide here. For some planned engagements, we're working on to have some youth engagement, so we would love to be able to meet with the SBOE Student Advisory Committee. We're working with DC Health to be able to meet with their Youth Advisory Committee. For family engagement, we are coordinating with PAVE to be able to have a focus group with some of their parents. And then we're looking for expert engagement with physicians and healthcare providers, university faculty, as well as national advocacy groups. And next slide, please. Thank you. And then just an overview of our revision timeline. March 2024, we attended the SHAPE conference and were able to learn about the new national standards. In May through August was when we were really doing that local and national standards review. September through October, we've been engaging the DC community with focus groups. November through December of this year. We'll collaborate with our subject matter experts for external review and a draft of the standards. We anticipate to release the draft standards for public comment February 2025. And then in April 2025 to be able to finalize the 2025 TC Health and PE standards.
So,
Thank-
yeah, I was just gonna say, were you done?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, done. It's on our question. So, yeah.
Great, there you go.
Yeah.
And also, we wanted to say hi and welcome to the student representatives. We've seen you from afar. You were very active in the first public engagement session. I'm sure you'll be active with us, and congrats for making it. I've met a couple of you and look forward to meeting all.
I was reading the PowerPoint, I remember you said something about currently looking for public charter school, like experts. Do you mean like teachers, like people who have been doing PE in public charter schools?
Yes.
And then,
So-
or, I mean, I go to public charter school. I mean, like my fifth grade Taekwondo teacher has been teaching at the same school for like a decade or two. Would that be useful? Sure. Like connect that or?
So, yeah, we're happy to connect with any teachers that may be able to provide us feedback onto the standards.
Yeah, we promoted via our ongoing networks and our LA Look Forward and through our educator networks to recruit educators to join the first round of focus groups that took place in September. So we will continue with those focus groups. And then if any educator is not available or doesn't feel like they are best positioned to participate in the focus group, we then invite them to review the actual draft standards and give feedback. And we found that some educators might not want to participate this early, but once they have a draft set of standards in their hands, that's really when they want to get down into it, and also to support with implementation supports in other ways.
So like, should I just CC you guys on the email?
Yes, thank you.
What's the email?
We'll have it at the end of this
Okay.
presentation for you. Thank you so much.
But I would just also say, well, have all the board members and the staff. Yes. I know, you know. And before you got, I do have one question, I know it's about jumping number. So based on the process that we did last year, did we fall in category 1 or category 2?
One, this is a consortium.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, so that we could go, so members, in your material, there's a copy of the process that the OSCE and SBOE, cross agency worked on for review of standards. So that is a copy of the materials. And you be sure that said this is a consortium set of standards, so we'll be following the first process outlined in category 1. I think about two members.
So here,
Is there a mandatory time limit for when standards are reviewed? This is a general question. Because I know that with the social studies standards, it was like decades between. And I noticed that this is only like 7 years. Is there a time limit now?
I think in the process that was outlined, 7 to 10 years,
8 to 10.
8 to 10 years.
Okay, okay. When were the standards before 2017? When were they reviewed before 2017?
2007.
So it was 10 years.
And we have been aligning with updates from national as well. So we are engaging in this process.
And sorry, just a caveat, so for the consortium standards, the timing is a little bit different according to our, lovely document that we put together. It is based upon, the national consortium when they update as well, so the timing can be, amended based on that.
And the last question, is there a curriculum that has been set for the health standards?
So. We do not have one set curriculum that all of our LEAs in the district use. So we are setting the standards, which include all of the knowledge that our students should learn as they matriculate from kindergarten through 12th grade. We will also, in parallel, as we're engaging both our educators and experts, be identifying implementation resources, both more broadly and how educators are implementing the standards in school. And then also specifically because we do know that there are some topics that are really emerging right now in the district and in classrooms. And so we will be collecting that information and being able to implement implementation resources as well for our educators.
Are you speaking for ownership for the menstrual health standards? Because that's a revolutionary thing for the country. And I want to make sure that all of the schools are working with those menstrual health standards.
So I think that the menstrual health standards were at least in part related to legislation, but I'm wondering what other legislation is relevant for these standards in either category.
There's some in the Healthy Schools Act. Tia, please go here too. There is some reference, there's the, making sure we're meeting the minutes requirements, which would come more into implementation. There is a requirement for CPR, AED training, so we want to make sure that that's in, I think, the 9th through 10th grade level.
And so you would just add those on to the core of.
Because there are already, like, for example, the Student Safety Omnibus Amendment Act, when that was passed regarding having our LEAs have both policies, but also training regarding sexual misconduct and child abuse. We did a robust review of our health education standards there per that law and found that we did not have to add any standards in that moment because our standards met the spirit of the law. So in many cases, we have standards, and when laws are passed, menstrual health was very different, being the first in the nation to pass those. Ours weren't that specific. But in many cases where there has been local legislation, when we do those reviews, we have found that because we follow the health education standards so closely, they're quite robust.
Let's go to Board Member Best, and then we'll go to Board Member Best.
All right, excuse me. So please excuse my voice. But during the hearing on the Seizure Safe Schools Amendment Act, DC Health mentioned that they thought that the health standards would be an appropriate place to consider instruction for students on seizures. Have you all given any thought to that, and if this would be a good place for it?
That's an excellent question, and that's under
Remember Black?
Yeah, just more of a comment, particularly on physical education standards. You know, as we look at this, I think one of the things we want to just reflect on is really the health challenges a lot of our students face, you know, which vary widely across the city, and view this as an opportunity to try to look also at the programs we provide after school, which I think also vary considerably school to school, and the resources we have available for students, such as weight rooms, such as recreational facilities at our various schools. I know we have certain challenges. Some of our charter schools are obviously small. It's hard to provide a full array of those services in those areas, but also looking at out of school time programming this to see if we can create those opportunities for recreation, because our kids right now, I mean, just looking at the physical fitness, it's not up to par with where it needs to be. And providing opportunities where we have exercise options for students after school that keep them in a positive space, that give them something to do, keep them out of trouble, I think would be a real way to actually improve the physical education. So we're not just educating kids about how to be physically active, we're actually achieving it. And I think that's an opportunity we can have as part of these standards. Is that something you're looking at as you do this?
Yep, we can take that into consideration, especially as we think through our implementation planning and resources, and really thinking through how do we support schools broadly in thinking about this, and are there some key areas to which these standards can support, integrate best practice and what we're thinking. So we can definitely take that back with us as we think. Go ahead, no, no, go
I
ahead.
think there's a tie to our second topic today as well, because we do in our graduate profile have I'm probably gonna mess up the words here, that Dr. Jones can put, but the physical wellness as part of that vision as well. So that is, an encompassing part of the holistic vision that we're trying to drive.
And in addition to that, I think it's a fantastic comment, and I can certainly share our drafts with, the Director of Parks and Recreation, as well as the DME will see it. But I can have a conversation around ties between these standards and the opportunities that out of school time as well as Parks and Recreation provides. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you for the thoughtful presentation. It's good to kind of know how we're situating this work in the national context and just being involved with those national updates. I'm curious kind of about like the outreach and engagement. So I think in terms of the questions, yes, I agree on the need to update them, and you have my support with that. The feedback on next steps in terms of the networks, like how OSSI engages teachers. Do you email, particularly with, like, say in the charter network, do you email particular LEAs, or do you email particular like teachers directly? Like how are we directly accessing teacher feedback?
For the LEAs, if we have like strong points of contact, we will be able to send those out. Like we had a great point of contact at KIP that was able to blast it out to all their teachers. We promote it within our LA Look Forward as well, to try and increase teachers. And
We also have a robust network of our health and PE leader cadre alumni. So for over a decade, we have had a health and PE leadership cadre, and we have lots of educators. In fact, one of our former teachers of the year, one of our PE teachers, Coach Roundtree, is very active in a lot of our work and has been attended in a focus group. And so we have that network, and so we will be continuing to blast more broadly, but then also leveraging the network of educators that come to our PD that have sought technical assistance and that show up as leaders in this space, as well as the superintendent's advisory groups.
Okay. Yeah, I asked not to to be critical, but just to kind of think about how we're structurally and systematically like reaching people who haven't also been involved, and knowing how those communication channels can be efficient. And then my other question is, in terms of like, we've talked, and I've appreciated the work and with updating standards, whether it be financial literacy or social studies, but in terms of like serving students, like it's gonna be the curriculum that's gonna make the impact and like the resources and activities and experiences that kids are having. So like, does OSSI see itself as being primarily responsible for developing the curriculum with like DCPS, or is this gonna be like a DCPS is gonna then take the standards and focus on developing the curriculum, or where does that responsibility and role lie?
That's a great question. And that's actually part of the work that we do within the Health and Wellness Division we've done since our existence. So our LEAs do determine their curriculum. As Jess mentioned, the CDC has two very robust curriculum selection tools that for many years, OSSI actually distributed hard copies. Nobody wants a hard copy anymore, but we still have plenty in our building if somebody wants to come get it. It's like 400 pages. And we have a team of folks that spent many years in the 2010s working with interested LEAs on using that tool to determine which curriculum is best for their students and how to review that curriculum. So that type of technical assistance has been and continues to be available to our schools and our LEAs regardless of the standard revision process.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, then like OSSI is supporting that work, but it's still incumbent upon DCPS or individual LEAs to make those curricular adjustments.
Right, it's not our role to dictate or say what curricular LEAs select, but we certainly can provide support in helping them select the best curricula that are out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Representative Reed online.
Good evening, everyone. I thank OSSI for their guiding questions for this discussion. Two questions and 1 point. In regards to the outreach, I would love to see engagement with student athletes possibly. I would kind of imagine that'd be a category of students who could get feedback. I'm sure all students, but if we can tap into maybe student athletes, I think they will be a little motivated to provide feedback. I'm curious about University of Maryland being tapped as the institution of higher education, as to why they were selected. I'm sure you all have really good reason. And I'm asking that to, well, one, I want to know why, and then two, I'm just curious how we're, just building capacity with our institutions of higher education in DC, to weigh in on standards, as well as just have, be engaged in this work. Similar like how we did with Howard University, we were updating the financial literacy standards. They gave really robust engagement. So I'm not sure if like University of Maryland has like a center for physical education and that's why they're tapped. I'm sure all the thought partners are great, but I would love to see possibly a DC higher institution of higher education, if possible, be included in the work, just so we can keep that pipeline going in regards to standards development. The last one is how is adaptive PE and accommodations, how will that be addressed in the standards? And I'm guessing, will that be like a preamble or supplemental materials? But just curious how we're going to address like accommodations for students with needs. Thank you.
Great, thank you for those. Yeah, so for definitely, I think, yeah, we can see how we can best engage with the student athletes. For UMD, they have master educator programs in both health ed and PE, and have courses that specifically reference using the standard as part of their curricula, but also to your wonderful points about engaging our local DC institutes of higher education, something we can take back and see how we may be able to do that. For adapted PE, SHAPE has some really great resources and information that we'll be able to lean into. So as we update our PE standards and look into how we're going to be supporting our schools and implementing the standards, that is a critical area that we will want to lean into to pull resources down to make sure we're providing LEs in schools with the information for how they can adapt the standards to support those students.
The only thing I'll add is that that's another area that is not new or specific to the revision process, that we have not only held PD sessions with our educators, and a lot of our education mentors, our PE mentors, really are leaders within their LEs around adaptive physical education. We've also held sessions over the top of the pandemic, holding one for parents, our parent navigator program here in the district, with helping to get their students moving in the house. So definitely a commitment that we've had. And as you said, as we update these standards, we'll look for new and innovative ways to continue to support our educators.
Thank you.
I have a question. You can go first. Go ahead.
Okay, so I noticed that you included the 2023 menstrual health standards, 2023? Yeah, and that's great. I love menstrual health. My charter school gets away with not having any sex ed or menstrual health classes at all. We have kids who think that when a woman gets stressed, that causes her to have a period. It is very unfortunate. Yeah, my charter school, and I think the way they got that around that was because there's like some sort of loophole that if you have a combined middle and high school and you have like 2 years of health class or whatever, and then you have like an optional year of PE or like something like that, they like replaced sex ed with PE, and both are important. But is there like a way that this can be resolved? I mean, I just think having a good sex ed class would be nice.
Thank you so much for bringing this up, and we will follow up with this. Thank you.
I have a question about with the physical education standards as we revisit in line, how that is going to be measured up against schools' ability to just have facilities that work well. Because when I think facilities, I mean grounds too, as far as like access to space. I asked this question as somebody who went to a charter school and had all of the range of experiences, from literally like going to school in the attic of the Children's Museum and being bused to what used to be a Boys and Girls Club, which is now closed for something, to staying on the college campus, that's what we were staying at the time, to being there while they were actually building the school. So I am wondering like how we are looking at this against our facilities and grounds as a city. I know we, did some work with NASB. I feel like that was last year. I don't know, my time is really split in the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic life, and that's about it. But, looking at like the fact that we don't actually have coherence, and like minimums across all of our LEAs, and so like how are we thinking about that, if at all?
It's definitely, so that's such an important statement. And it's something that comes up in a number of technical assistance spaces. You know, from our seat as the SEA, we do not oversee or dictate facilities for schools and space. But we do work with schools when they are doing some type of a self-assessment of how they are implementing standards, how they are following the Healthy Schools Act. If space and facilities is an issue, we definitely talk with them about how they can bring that to their leadership and explore how it impacts scheduling and explore how it impacts budgets. But it's something that we provide technical assistance on, but do not have oversight in.
Would it be, I mean, maybe, and I don't know if this is partially a conversation like the deputy mayor or others, but even if it's some type of survey, or just some type of feedback around, once the standards are finalized, if there are places where, we're looking and we're saying, you know, schools are supposed to provide, I'm just gonna make up something, schools are supposed to provide 60 minutes of physical activity a day. But based on your facilities and your enrollment, you can't make that happen, even if you got really creative with this, like something, because I would imagine those things do and could arise, but and yeah, as we start to move the implementation.
We'd be happy to talk further. We actually have some good data.
Yeah, and I think it's worth a discussion with the public charter school board as well, because as they are recertifying, perhaps this is a question that could be a part of that recertification process.
And that's enough, but I don't mean it to be specifically a charter issue.
What do you think DCPS did?
Well, yeah, so like I have, so I'll use Ambeers as an example. I have, Ambeers has 4 lunch periods. Just because of their enrollment and the limited space they have in their building, which means I have kids that don't eat until like 1:45, right? And so just given some of the space constraints of our buildings and some of the things we're facing around modernization and changes in population and enrollment and all the others. So I don't need to single out charters. I just show that it's not.
All right, any other questions, comments?
One follow-up question. Sorry to speak out of turn, but I can't see. One follow-up question is, are there state level approved curricula for physical education and the health standards? So like, is there a cadre of things that people can choose from? Yeah, I'll stop there.
Not a state level approved, but over the years that we have supported LEAs in using the health education curriculum tool and the physical education curriculum tool, there are definitely curricula that we know have met that standard and that we hear from our annual school health profiles that schools and LEAs are using. So if a school, particularly if like a new charter school is opening and has questions, we can guide them to some that we know are most commonly used that meet that, but we do not have any that we like own, procure, or require or offer in that way.
Okay, and I guess when I say that, I'm just meaning like the state has looked at the standard, whatever, the even older, whatever's coming, and said, okay, here are like maybe 4 or 5 that meet these standards, and then the LEA can select from that list. Does that occur?
Not necessarily, because I think there are the LEAs that are much older than OSSI, so they've had their own curriculum process, their own curricular review process longer than us. But again, if an LEA were to reach out, and we know that DCPS's curriculum selection team is and their process is more robust. But if particularly a charter, a new charter, or an expanding charter, we've had that happen where a charter has added grades and now they're moving into more of a middle school or a high school territory where they have been interested in technical assistance, we can offer some suggestions. But we don't have like a page with a list of vetted curriculums, and that gets into a space of promoting specific businesses that feel not appropriate for contracting or procurement rules.
Yeah, I wonder if this is an area that we can explore. Not this is probably a bigger conversation. And I'll end here like we explore in regards to I do think like the role of state education agency is to, promote a vision related to, how we arrive to collective outcomes, given the space that, we have 60 some odd LEAs who can operate very independently. So I'm just wondering, maybe a later date or some point, or just to hold in thought of like how we can possibly guide some of our outcomes by like setting a standard for certain things. I totally understand the business aspect. So just wonder how we can navigate vision and balance, like without endorsing certain products. So thank you all.
Here, let's take two more and then we'll move on. Representative Henderson and then Representative Barnes.
I was just gonna ask if literacy is the only category for which that is true, where there is an approved list, and that's just because of legislation.
That's right.
Barnes.
I wanted to say that I realize, most of this isn't solely falling on the actual standards itself. However, I do believe that most of it is stemming from the student engagement that we see. Oftentimes in the classroom, we don't see a lot of student engagement when it concerns, health class and physical education class. So my question to you is, would that fall on the teacher themselves to ensure that they're prioritizing these things in the classroom, or would it be, that we do have to revise? Because me personally, I don't really see too much of an issue with it. It's just more so the students don't want to participate. So how we approach that?
Sure, so I think that, it comes in, I think, to, once we are in, to public comment as well, we have some like strong, and we have the standards to reply to, really having that parallel conversation with, implementation and resources, and also being able to making sure at that time too, we're coming back to students and we're talking with students, we're talking with teachers. And how do we really dig in and identify like what are those supports that'll help have the resources in the schools that align and that meet those standards. So we can ensure that what the students are receiving supports them in wanting to be engaged and wanting to learn this information, and supports the teachers in being able to do that, supports the school leaders in being able to support those approaches as well.
Thank you so much. And now we'll move to an update on first, thank you, Tia and Jessica, and everyone for your engagement on those important standards. Next, we'll move to our discussion, an update on the district-wide graduate profile. And Dr. Jones.
Good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. Great, wonderful. So today's update on the Reimagining High School graduation requirements work will be focused on primarily three areas. So the first is updates on the summer and fall engagement activities centered on the current draft of the DC-wide graduate profile and the graduation requirements. The second is a discussion on some of the common themes that have emerged from these public engagement activities. And then we will hold space to talk about next steps and then have questions. So since we convened in August 2024 on this topic, we have had the opportunity to continue to collect a lot of really good data that has been used to influence the next version of the profile, as well as continue conversations on proposed recommendations for the graduation requirements. And the backdrop for this has really been the three areas that are listed here. So we have continued to conduct targeted sessions that are with educators, students, parents, organizations. And then also we conducted 2 public feedback sessions in the month of September. I will talk a little bit more later on which groups we have convened with. Second, from ensuring that we are getting the feedback from these stakeholders to make sure that the necessary voices are included in our work. We also, on our website still at this moment, have a public feedback form. So the profile, as you all know, is currently on the website for public comment. The public feedback form will remain on the website for a little bit longer. We are right now still in the process of having our feedback sessions, but at the end of this month, The data that's collected from that public feedback form, as well as the additional data from our feedback sessions, will be incorporated within the final draft of the profile. The only area that's not listed here as far as to who the public feedback form was pushed out to is, and this is a very important group. In 2023, and when we last met, I referenced this survey collection instrument that we deployed. It was sent to high school administrators, so at DCPS charter schools, as well as central office staff, youth rehabilitation and corrections. That same body also received a direct communication with the public feedback form. So wanted to make sure that when they provided their initial recommendation, now that we had a draft, that same group was actually able to provide their feedback on the draft. So we reached back out to that group as well. Thank you all for the recommendation that came up from our last meeting about pushing out to college students that were DC public school or charter school graduates. We did also query our last 5 years of DC tag recipients, so that population was less than 7,000 students. So that was a wonderful idea that came out of this last meeting. And at the backdrop of this was a very robust social media campaign. I will say that I am not an avid social media user, but knowing that this work was something that needed to be reposted, I definitely became familiar with liking, resharing for this work. So that's just a little bit about what we did to help make sure that we were able to continue to get quantitative feedback, qualitative feedback on the profile to move to this next draft. Next slide, please. And so here is just an overview of the groups that we met with really in the last 2 months. You'll see it's broken down into school staff as well as high school and college students. You'll see there we had the opportunity at OSCE's DC Teachers Conference to meet with the students that are at the University of District of Columbia, Trinity Catholic University, to hear their experiences and how they felt like they were prepared for the college going experiences and what it is that they would have liked to see within their high school experience. And then we've also continued to have conversations with the education community, college and career organizations, and parents and families as well. So this is just an overview of who we have met with. I shared that we're going to continue to have these conversations throughout the month of October. As we move towards the final version of the profile, I think it's also important to say that this is not going to be the end of when we have these conversations. One of the next groups that we are convening in Q1 of 2025 is an educator implementation group. And that group will be used as an advisory council to provide feedback on implementation resources centered around the profile. So that's exemplars for things like lesson plans, rubrics, et cetera. We want to make sure that the folks that are in the building are able to give us input on how they could best see the profile implemented in the classroom. And then naturally, as we move in our work for the graduation requirements, we'll continue to have conversations centered on those. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I am very pleased to share that resoundingly, the feedback on the profile has been positive. And so some of the areas that stakeholders really championed and were glad to be included in the profile was the inclusion of financial literacy, as well as social emotional learning. And then also, we got a really good amount of feedback on the learner agency competencies that are included, which are centered around how a student is able to advocate for themselves in the classroom, or if they're off on internship, and also how to navigate with their peers. So one of the other good things about this, and I shared that we met with the college students that were at UDC Trinity and also
at Catholic University, is we got to talk to students about what their experiences were in high school. I also should share, and this came up during our last session, that there was a query surrounding us engaging not only GCPS students, but charter school students to make sure that we cover a broad array and diverse group of students. We are working in tandem with the DMV's office on a comprehensive list of both charter schools and also with DCPS central office for GCPS schools to go visit. So we're starting those next week. And out of the groups that we have met with thus far, the benefit of talking to students directly has been that they have been able to share what their experiences were and where they need support. And we've been able to draw and make connections with what we're doing in the profile. So they talked about how they would have liked to have more early exposure to professionalism, being able to communicate and articulate themselves both in writing and verbally. So getting that feedback has been really critical and help us to drive home the importance of the profile. So thank you for that recommendation from the last meeting about reaching out to those groups. We have also gotten a lot of feedback, not only from organizations, parents, students, surrounding the importance of having that local and global citizenship characteristic. Folks have said we are in such a diverse city that having this characteristic is not only important for the learners know how to actively live with each other, but also have early exposure to what it means to be a local citizen. Some of the recommendations that have come out of this has been, should we also look more heavily into if the competency should include things like learning a language? So there are a couple of areas that have come out of this that we are going to take back and have conversations on for this next draft of the profile. That is one of the main areas that we have gotten feedback on, and you all will see once the profile is posted at the end of the month, that is an area that there will be and then the last thing that has emerged, and this is predominantly come from the educator community as well as parents, has been on how will the profile be implemented, also assessment activities surrounding this, also the connection to curriculum and how it ties to our accountability framework. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so this was fun. So I was able to attend the DCPS block party and use a couple of data collection methods to get feedback on the profile. So one was real-time feedback on if stakeholders were content, happy, or felt like there were areas for opportunities within the profile. And we can see resoundingly out that really emerged in areas that the attendees of the block party felt like hit the nail on the head, or the social emotional well-being, and that aligns with the feedback that we got as well from the public feedback session. Also, the importance of media and technology literacy, the financial literacy, and then also making sure that CTE is an area that we have highlighted within this work. So those are some of the additional themes that emerged from the block party activity. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, as shared, we currently still have the draft of the profile on our website. It will remain until next week. At that point in time, that draft will come down. We will be making the updates to the current draft of the profile, and that will be published at the end of October. We have an upcoming October 23rd external steering committee meeting, so we want to be able to discuss the changes to the profile with that group. We're going to continue to host our listening sessions as I shared throughout this month of October. And I shared that some of the revisions that we're going to have are very, very minor. Thank you for the feedback that was given, Representative Best about the importance of including joy and a love for learning in the learner agency characteristic that will be included. And then our teaching and learning colleagues had a couple of just very minor edits so that the profiles will be more closely aligned to what's included within our social studies and social emotional learning standards. Those areas are already vetted. They just wanted the language to mirror just a little bit more. And they're literally maybe like 2 or 3 competencies that have edits there. And then also a very important piece of feedback that we have received is just making sure that the language within the profile speaks to inclusivity for students that have disabilities. And so those are some of the minor edits, in addition to what I shared about the local enrolled citizenship that will be included within the next version of the profile. And then some of the engagement activities that are forthcoming, I shared the educator encouragement that will be convened. And then we're going to continue to have conversations as we move forward with the work on the graduation requirement. I think that that's the last slide, and we are open for questions.
And I'm going to assume that it wasn't due to effort, but when I was looking at engagement with parents and families, I noticed that we didn't have it east of the river groups, and I'm assuming that you might have reached out. And what I'm more so offering is, if need be, we are more than happy to try to, coordinate something, whether that's with the Ward 8 Education Council, the Ward 7 Education Council. I know we got Mr. Barnes down here as a student representative and stuff like that. Whereas those of us who live east of the river, represent east of the river, can help you with that, because I would hate for this to happen without some major input from east of the river. So it's more of an offer than anything else.
And thank you for that offer, because all of the education councils were queried and engaged.
That's why I said I'm sure they were, but some of the connections may have got lost in transit.
We probably were whispering about it.
Yeah,
It's a genuine offer. Thank
yeah,
you for
so
that.
we want to be supportive,
Yes, thank you.
making sure that we help facilitate that.
And the DCS Block Party was helpful in getting folks from all over the city as well, but direct help with those groups.
All right, thank you.
We whisper for good calls.
Okay, if you wanted to provide feedback or have like a friend provide feedback on like the community service hours aspect of the requirement, when would that be? So like, for more context, I remember like hearing about one of my friends had a bill idea. His idea was kind of crazy. It's abolish all community service hours. And I disagree with that, but then I heard other ideas where it's like you can take the community service hours requirement and maybe add to that, or like make it like a community service hours / like working out of thing, or community service hours / club thing requirement. For those kinds of like input and feedback, when would it be?
So we still have on the Reimagining High School Graduation Requirements website a public feedback form. And we will keep that form open until the end of next week. It was originally slated to close on the 4th. But given, just like you said, that there may be the opportunity for additional feedback, and because we have the State Board of Education student group meeting on next week. So we'll just keep that feedback form up until the end of next week to make sure that we can work out the additional feedback.
So if your friends on the student advisory committee, they can give us the feedback directly, then it's awesome.
Thank you.
I'll also add, this is just the graduate profile, so sort of like ideals for what a graduate should have. And after that, students will discuss further what actual specific requirements on that.
Yeah, like in the slide.
Thank you for that.
Yes, so first, is the idea that like everything that's in the profile will somehow be supported by standards or courses, or is some of it kind of like possibly live outside of that? I'm thinking of things like, students asking about professionalism and just kind of wondering where that might fit in. And then a second question, I'm curious what you're thinking about in terms of either a computer science or digital literacy or some kind of category that gets at those other skills that students brought up in terms of grad requirements or.
So, many of the elements of the profile are supported by state standards, but many of them aren't, as you've indicated. One of the things that we hope that the profile will do is to encourage more project-based learning, more apprenticeships, internships, things like that, where students can learn and demonstrate those skills that aren't necessarily standards-based. And so when we do the graduation requirements, we'll be thinking about, are there ways that we can encourage students to do those types of things in the context of high school, which might mean we have to reduce some of the Carnegie credits that are required. The steering committee will have discussions about that. But our idea is that some of the parts of the profile are indeed standards-based. Other parts will require different types of experiences in order to get at student proficiency.
Thanks. And the question about computer science and digital literacy.
So, as you know, there is a characteristic around media digital literacy. The extent to which there has been discussion about some type of requirement there. I don't know that it would necessarily be a computer science course, but it could be a life skills course that includes a component on computer literacy. The steering committee will talk about that when we talk about graduation requirements. Yes.
Yeah, thank you again for this work. My question is kind of on the bottom bullet point for the profile themes. You don't have to go back to it, but I just wanted to kind of ground it where my questions come with regards to the broader community having questions on like assessment, curriculum, and accountability. I'm curious about the process in which like OSSE communicates like CAPE results to schools and or to families. So like what does that process look like? Like when do schools get that data? When do parents get that data? Because oftentimes in some of the schools I represent and in schools that I've taught at, we're getting that information after students are already enrolled in classes. And therefore it's hard to like make sure that if the goal is to track student progress and make sure students are getting the support that they need or getting into a support class or getting into a particular class, it's too late. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it is a great question. I think that you're not the only person that has raised questions about the timing of our state assessment results. Currently, we are able to share state assessment results. August is when we are able to share like the first cut at the results. And then we have growth data that comes in and we'll be able to share more. Are we sharing more in December? Is that when Ellie?
With the report card release.
Yes, with the report card release. And so you're quite right, that timing is not ideal for using that year's test scores with that year's students. It is helpful to know, to take the pulse of where our students are. But you're quite right, the timing is not good. We've had discussions about whether or not it is possible for us to release test scores earlier. We know that some other states do, but of course it comes down to financing because we are able to release test scores based on the work that OSSE does in the division of data analysis and research. If we wanted to release scores earlier, we would probably have to contract out to get some help, and that is a fiscal concern.
Okay. I mean, I would be curious as to like how we could support you in advocating that, because I think having that data earlier is going to be better for parents and families and for schools in knowing what classes kids need to take. And the other thing I had with that is like, I was somewhat disappointed when we shifted from Park to Cape because the assessment itself is not like iterative. It still doesn't give teachers or families like specific information around skills and knowledge. And if the whole goal here is to make a very student-centered point around making sure we're identifying individual learning needs, and then we're not giving the most relevant stakeholders the data that they need for individual learning needs, then we're falling short. So I'm just kind of,
That's a very strong argument.
yeah, and so I'm curious kind of when is the next time we might look at which assessment we use, because Matt or other states are using other things that are better serving students, and I'd like for us to move in that direction.
A couple things. I think one, we do want to make sure we're staying focused on the working session topics, and we don't let this like a performance oversight hearing. I think that it's definitely something that we are discussing. However, there are a lot of aspects that go into that. Happy to continue to engage in those conversations, but I think there's a maybe a better avenue to have those conversations.
Yeah, I'm happy to collaborate on that.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I'm just curious when Aussie's feedback form will close. October sixth.
We're gonna keep it open until the end of next week, so next Friday, not this Friday, but the Friday following that.
That's 11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
October 11th is that Friday.
Well, thank you so much for being such great thought partners and for the suggestions that you made the last time. We really did enhance our outreach, and we got great feedback. So thank you very much for that.
Hey, this is Alistair. Sorry to chime in last minute. I didn't know when to jump in here. I have the same question as I did last time, which is, it sounds like you are doing a thoughtful job at aggregating and creating a framework. It also sounds like we are adding things. Like, I mean, even the conversation around digital literacy feels like we are adding to the plate of things that we need our students to accomplish. I think the question that has been on my mind, as you know, and that especially teachers have been bringing up to me, and my colleagues on the board, is if we add things that the students need to show competency for, what goes, right? What are the things that we deprioritize when we prioritize these other aspects? Because if we don't, and those are still requirements, then it's unclear how we fit it all in a school day and how the teachers are able to accomplish it. So I think I'd love to hear if any additional thought has been put into, as we're thinking about this new framework, what are some of the, and I actually, I really appreciate the aspects of the things that you are prioritizing. How do we create space for those things to be prioritized?
Thank you very, very much for your question. Your question is very important and at the heart of the discussion that we hope to have with the steering committee when they meet later on in October. I think that some of the ideas that have come up might be, course substitutions, maybe more project-based learning that enables the teacher to work with the same standards, but to do it in a different way. But I think inevitably, if we are serious about this, the requirements will have to change and some things will have to be taken away. So that is critical question and one that we hope to begin exploring at the steering committee meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us honest.
That's our job.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. I'll continue your time this evening. Happy to allow you all to transition to
our September annual, debrief, from members. We now have time on our agenda to debrief our September panel meeting on graduate profiles. You have a summary document, key highlights from the panel, in your folders, or if you choose online like me, then they are online. Does anyone, you don't have any immediate comments, or next steps they'd like to raise?
Thanks, Aussie team.
Yes, they're gone now.
You like Carly.
Oh, well, I'm sure it'll get through the universe.
Harder for you all to see, so, yes, they're gone now. So we are looking at the, September debrief document. If folks need a moment to process, I'm happy to give us the break now. And we can debrief when we come back from break. Is that better for folks?
I think so.
All right, so it is 6:17 now. What do we need? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Okay, let's do 10 minutes. So, this is 7 minutes, let's split the baby. 6:25, we'll reconvene. It's 6:18 now. All right.
But it's back.
Was y'all gonna run out of energy like I am? All right, okay, so, September panel debrief, graduate profiles, any immediate, thoughts?
I'm just really interested to see where Posse will go with graduation requirements and was particularly interested in the pathway systems in North Dakota. So I mean, I still have questions about those, but I think that's interesting and hope that's something that they will explore.
I thought it was a really good panel. I really appreciated, the perspectives, especially, I was already kind of familiar with the work from North Dakota, and I'm excited to have that create more opportunity both for, students who have special needs, and students who, we can think of that maybe on a, path other than like a liberal arts college education path, because that's what our graduation requirements are tailored to. I would say that hearing the folks from Trinity was really helpful, and hearing the, young man, and I cannot remember his name, who was a fellow in the Student Advocate's Office. I think he provided really, poignant testimony, and I'm hopeful, that it helps us in our thinking about bridging what is coming out of the graduate profile into, recommendations for changes to graduation requirements. I also know that, I talked to the dean from Trinity. She's also looking forward, to doing more engagement around some of the math things, as she, expressed, with some of her feedback around where students need additional support, and have had to take opportunities at her institution around remedial courses. So, I think those are good connections to me. Other thoughts or feedback? Yes, from Susan.
Yeah, I would also like to applaud the team for finding out, like managing to reach out to Utah and North Dakota. Like, that was like so unexpected. That really speaks to like how far you guys looked for people to be on our panel. Thank you guys for doing that work.
All right, if there is no, I'm happy to move us forward, to public, meeting panel discussion for future months. Tonight, we can talk about potential topics for November and December. Each proposed, and discussed will be followed by a public vote. If no topics have been proposed in the public meeting and a topics tracker, the floor will be open for suggestions. No suggestions given, there will be a vote to not have a panel, or there can be a vote to not have a panel. Currently, 2 proposed topics in the public meeting panel tracker are for November. Educator Excellence Committee has added cell phones in schools, I believe. I don't know if there's someone from the committee who wants to elaborate on that.
A positive thing in the classroom. So what we're looking at is sort of an overarching idea of making sure that all schools have a cell phone policy that doesn't allow phones in the classroom. So the students can't use their phones while they're in their classroom. And from all I've heard talking to students and administrators and teachers, it has to do with the fact that the distraction of having the phone and being able to use it is not conducive to learning in the classroom. So I would like for us to get some experts or students, experts and students who are experts to talk on this topic. Because it's not going away, and the wave has started to build nationwide. And from talking to the people in the charter and the public schools, there's a great need to have some kind of a policy, not a specific policy, you can't do it this way, but a policy that the phone shouldn't be used in the classroom. Does that cover that, Representative Henderson?
Well, I would just add that in the panel, could have the conversation,
Yeah.
not everyone has to share that conclusion, that, participate in the panel.
Representative Williams?
Yeah, I mean, I know that you have strong feelings on this, and I do too as a teacher. I think that there's benefits in thinking about how to make particular recommendations, like for the statewide level. And I think there would be a robust conversation to be able to inform whatever action we would want to take. So I do believe that it does impact learning. And I think that how we recommend implementation also needs to be thoughtful. So that was part of the rationale for doing a panel to hear from stakeholders as to what we might do moving forward.
And we also took from the last working session that was a shared, there was a shared desire to have a panel on.
Also in the tracker, Vice President Patterson has added education as a civil right. Vice President Patterson, do you want to talk about your suggestion?
Yes, I made it for November because based on a lot of things that we've done recently, particularly that we just passed a resolution to extend for a certain amount of time. I want to try to get this work done before then, and I think we would benefit enormously because I think a lot of people have a lot of questions because nothing has come from the working group as of yet. But to talk to some experts that are doing it in other states that are talking about education as a civil right, to come before us to explain what's happening in other states, what's being pushed in other states, what this looks like for the District of Columbia, should we put forth a resolution or anything else that they come before us at, before we get ready to vote on anything, and really talk about it and give us some background on it. So that's why I asked for it in November, particularly because we're coming up on a deadline where we're going to sunset that working group. And I would like to have this body as a whole kind of understand from experts who are working on it in different areas what it really means. So I'll entertain any questions too.
Do you have a sense as to like what the end goal or outcomes might be? Like if we recommend education as a civil right, or if we don't, like what that means for like implementation?
Yes, so I've had conversations, and those are some of the things that we're going to share as we come out of the working group. We have to meet to kind of like discuss more of what that looks for the District of Columbia. But basically what it's saying is like, what does a quality education look like? What should kids feel like they should receive from their school districts? It would also be a resolution that would be put forth. So there would be wording around that resolution. We'd be seeking a resolution, and possibly like other states are doing, looking at what that means for their actual, they have constitutions. We have a home rule charter, what that means as far as guaranteeing residents and students a quality education. I do want to make sure that I state that this is not about something where people get to do class action lawsuits against the District of Columbia or a particular school. It's just talking about really what does it mean to have a quality education? What should parents have? What can they expect to be in that as far as quality education? I think it ties to a lot of the work that we're doing across the board on everything else, whether we're talking about accountability framework and even the graduate profile. So it kind of all pulls that together. And when I talk to experts across the nation and stuff like that, it's kind of like doing the finishing work to Brown versus Board of Education. Basically, it's like there were a lot of things that were unfinished about Brown versus Board of Education. And we want to look at that. You know, it had its good parts and it had some bad parts that didn't actually come out the way that we had hoped it would have back in the day. So I think we would all benefit to looking back a little bit to see where we actually want that to be and what was left out. So that's basically the discussion, but it ends with the end game is a resolution and maybe a proposal for something in the home chart.
Thank you.
I think those are the only two things we have in the tracker. I want to make sure I'm not wrong about that. That's correct for the tracker for November. Was there anything that maybe was not put in the tracker but wants to be put on, someone wants to put on the table this evening? In
Yeah,
addition to those, because we have two, yes.
not necessarily for November, but maybe December.
I know we're talking about November right
All right, I'll stop.
now. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get to December, I promise.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and so I don't know if. So I don't know if people want to discuss like the two, and then take a vote on one, or if folks feel like they wanna. Like, because people have put things on the table, we haven't really like discussed, but I don't know if people have additional thoughts if they want to discuss, because we do have to vote. And so I'm asking for some feedback, yes.
My first thought, while I do think that talking about that having a panel about phones is important, and I know that there are a lot of conflicting opinions here. The Civil Rights Working Group seems much more pressing and relevant. I think that phones are an important issue, but also will be ongoing and will not be fixed by any type of resolution, whereas there would perhaps be something significant done by learning more about what Representative Patterson was talking about. So I am more in support of that panel than the phones. And I'd be curious what you think.
Oh, sorry. Representative Glenn.
I just want to actually second that. I agree completely with Representative Mayor on this. I think I support both panels. I just think the timing for the Education Civil Rights Working Group is perfect because it gets the issue on the table really ahead of the budget season. And I think there's some things that we really need to think about. We're a tale of two cities here in DC. If there was ever a case where you could say, are our students uniformly across the city getting the same rights to a quality education? I think we can ask that question here in Washington, DC, and getting a group to look at that and put it in our home rule act, I think is really powerful. So I'd like to look at that first, and then I would love to see us look at the cell phone issue in December. I think that's also very important. And I think it would just give us some time to maybe get more feedback. I think we could get that important feedback working with the Student Advisory Committee, and that might give us some more time for that work. And then possibly bring that up for panel discussion in December, once we've fully engaged the students in that. So that's my preference there.
I mean, I also want to add that we're coming up on an important anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education, actually when it was implemented. That happens in December. It's the 70th. It was passed in May, but when they started truly implementing it, was like that December and everything. So we're coming up, we'll be right in time for whatever we're talking about with the anniversary, the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education.
I was gonna offer so I know that the Education Civil Rights Committee has a sunset. I know that it's not the first I've heard of the phones in school. I know that we have also talked about, are there other ways for us to get information that is not a panel at our public meeting? And so I'm wondering if we want to create a different opportunity, or which of these might lend itself to some other type of opportunity outside of the public meeting. Like if we're through cell phones, are we envisioning that we want more feedback from like parents and families? Is it something we should be setting up like a roundtable for? Or like, I'm trying to figure out for each of the topics and getting to the finish line, who else do we want to hear from? And what is the purpose of each panel? Because we might want to explore different avenues than a public meeting panel, and we have in these different avenues. Does that make sense? And so I'm looking, I think at the two of you, to talk a little bit about that, because I'm making some assumptions, and so I want to, I'm looking to check my assumptions. So I'm making the assumption, because I've heard in the discussion, that with the cell phones in particular, it's not that we're looking at one, we do have some members who have strong opinions, but we also want to hear different opinions, and this is something that people in the public are already discussing and are talking about. And we want to hear more from the public. Is that right, or am I missing something?
I think what is bothering me is that there's no action from DCPS there's no policy. They leave it up to the schools. And the more you leave things up to other entities, nothing gets done. And I mean, I'm in the schools a lot, and I see some schools that collect the phones, so there's not a problem with that kind of a distraction. And there are other schools, especially some of the high schools, where I see students on their phones in the hallways and blah, 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 blah. And there's no policy about it. And to me, it's an urgent problem. As I told everyone, I didn't allow my students to have phones in the room. And they did, they went with the rules. And it really helped learning take place. But if we've got a deadline that Representative Patterson is throwing at me right now, the deadline, I think I'd rather have a round table where we have more people. And I'd rather have the student, the SAC to poll their members, to poll its members or whatever, to find out things, but it's an urgent problem. We have urgent problems, truancy, attendance, violence in the schools, and I think cell phones fall into that. If students, because it distracts the student from their learning. We who have children know that we ask our children to do all the stuff on the computers and everything else, that do everything, and everybody's got a phone. All right, and the safety part is one story, but it's not that. It's what's going on when they're supposed to be learning in the classroom. But I'm not making a judgment for our committee, but they're both here. And I don't. What could we postpone it to December? Or I'd much rather do a ramp, but I don't know what you have for December either.
Well, it's not what I have.
Well, you have two. Somebody else.
And so there are other things that people do want to put on the table for December, but I think I'm asking, given the committee has had some discussion and it sounds like has some idea about what would be helpful in between. We see this as a problem and we would like to have a recommendation around a unified policy. What inputs do we need to get there? And so is it that we want to hear from more parents, students, teachers, and that's what we need? Is it that we want to hear from more experts? Is it that we want to look at other school district policies? Like what I guess I'm asking, because if it's we want to hear from more people that are like DC people, I guess it's like a roundtable might be a better fit. If it's that we want to hear from more experts in like other jurisdictions, we also could host like we've hosted meetings in the past that are like policy specific where we hear from people and then do a resolution. And so I guess I'm asking, and maybe it's some complement, multiple things, but I'm asking, given you've identified a problem and you've identified a solution, what inputs are needed to get to the solution? So we can pick the right avenues. I'm not, because what I hear Representative Vice President Patterson saying is, they have a deadline for their committee, in addition to, an anniversary for Board of Education, and they want to hear from experts. And that's a very specific ask, if they want to hear from experts. I'm not hearing anything else, which is why I didn't suggest that for a public roundtable, because they want to hear from experts right now.
And the reason
I
that,
just want to make sure I'm not interpreting anybody's stuff wrong.
right,
I'm
and,
curious to think about the timing for the working group. We're having the panel on education and civil rights at the November public meeting. The next week is the week of Thanksgiving, and then the following week is the working session where I guess we would present a draft to the board. So there's 4.5, 5 working days between that panel and whatever product you would like to present. So that is not a lot of time to implement any suggestions that we're getting
okay,
during the panel. So I don't know if a roundtable earlier might be more useful to using those insights, or if you want to say we can make it work during that shorter time period. But I just want to, because there's a bunch of days off, that right after that, I want to make sure we can do that.
and the reason I point to a panel more so than anything is because it's so technical. A lot of the parts of it is so technical, even as I engage, the staff, the state board staff, because of there's a lot of law and legalese that goes into it. And so breaking that down and making it into layman terms, I think facilitates more so a panel that can kind of like break it down. And specifically for the District of Columbia, which is not a state, how does this affect us? That is not a state, we hope to be a state, of course, but we're not one currently. So how does, this suggestion, so to speak, how would that work with us? And that's why I say a panel of experts, and the people that I've been talking to, some of them, they were born and raised here in the District of Columbia. And they went off and they gone to different colleges and stuff like that and lived in different areas, but they know what that means for the District of Columbia. As being people who have been raised here, come through the school system, have been around since, we talk about Sousa, that was part of, Brown versus Board of Education. They truly understand the dynamics of it, but a lot of times you need someone who has had those experiences and know that legalese to explain it in layman terms. And I think that's why I say it's the more facilitation of a panel where they're talking, and then the members can ask questions as to like, okay, I kind of get it, but what does this mean? So that's the reason I said panel.
Okay, all of that is helpful. We can, so either one of these put in themselves, we can do the public meeting as the cell phones, since we want to hear from the public, and then we can also convene a panel. We've done that, like I think we did that with sexual assault. Sorry.
Artificial intelligence.
We did that with artificial intelligence. Like, this is why I'm talking through, like, what do people need to get to their end product so we know where to place stuff? I'm just trying to understand what folks need to get to work. I see movement over here. Yes.
Sorry. Another question, so the working group sunsets, but then there will be a response from the board. So I'm wondering if it might make sense for the working group to produce its product, and then we have a panel that can speak to that product. It's just a question on that. Being prescriptive.
You talk about in which order that they would, so to speak.
Yeah, so maybe it would be helpful to have that panel that can be responding to the product and help the larger board respond to that, because that would happen after that will happen after the working group sunsets, if I understand correctly. Just a question.
Okay.
It's not a question for me though, because I'm not working. That's why I'm looking for my decision. I guess given that my question is based on Representative Henderson's suggestion, would the panel inform the product? Like, do you need the panel to inform the product that the working group is producing? Or do you want the panel to respond to a product that kind of helps translate it for the larger pool?
I actually think that the panel kind of addresses or informs.
Okay,
That what will eventually come out of the working group. Because I think once we can break it down into layman terms and stuff like that, that will also inform us, the working group members, as far as what comes next.
okay.
I'm chiming in. I'm also curious if, like under the clock, like, like at our public meeting, like, would that structure do it justice, to only have 3 minutes of questions and answers? I know we always can touch base afterwards, but I just feel like given, the historic context, even just opportunity and given, DC had the bowling versus sharp, like maybe just a special event for it, where, we can get a lot of engagement or, I don't know, bring more people in, hear more thoughts, not feel so rushed. I'm just curious about like the formatting. And then when does the group sunset? Because I'm wondering if there's an extension, opportunity for extension, and maybe just leave it indefinite until you get a product.
November 30th was what was said, Dr. Reed.
Okay.
To your question, I think we can always have follow up as we do with any type of panel and everything like that. But I think it's really important that we kind of inform the whole body and that they also inform the working group, because as I engage people on the subject matter, it is a really kind of like technical type of thing. And even though, we only have 3 minutes for questioning, I think some of those questions and everything that comes from the members will truly inform what we eventually recommend coming out of the working group.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a suggestion, and then I just want to acknowledge something that, maybe nobody wants to say out loud. Our members are pretty good at attending, the public meeting. And our members are pretty good at attending our working sessions. Our members are less great, at attendance at things when we say we are gonna move it outside of those spaces. Now, we cannot do everything in public meetings or in working sessions because that's just not realistic. It's also just not fair to the public because those meetings get to be way too long. I tend to think that avenue like we use for AI and we use for sexual assault might actually better accomplish for your product. But I would also I also remember when we did the AI roundtable, it was sparsely attended by members, despite the fact that we agreed as a body that was the best venue for us to educate ourselves and contribute to the product. So I'm just going to say that out loud as someone who does not, who thinks both of these things are valuable and remember what that was like. And so I don't know if that is figuring into these discussions as far as like which one we want to do a public panel for. I do think the cell phones probably lends itself better to getting, like, if we do it as a topic, we can accomplish at one time, getting feedback from folks, and then wouldn't have to put it on our staff to find another day for a roundtable that's good for the public and all the things. But I would also hope that if we do some type of roundtable for this, we're better than we have been in the past, and actually like attend.
And so for the very reasons that you just stated, that's why I would like to have it as a panel, because I know, nothing against AI, but it seemed to have died. All momentum kind of died, and we haven't focused on it again. It was not well attended. It kind of died. It got lost in transition, so to speak. And I would hate for this to happen.
Yes, I would say it died publicly.
Publicly.
But there has, I mean, like, we've still had conversations with agencies, and in the weeks I got an email from Representative Best, while we were sitting here saying, like, can you find out again? There's some other things
But you
there,
understand the difficulty.
yeah, but as that happened, like, I know, and I don't, and Brendan, I see you nodding, because everybody's trying to be polite. It's a working session, so we're trying to work through some things. But I want to keep our work moving.
Right.
And so I'm just stating that since nobody wants to say it out loud, I'll say it.
So since members attend working sessions more, could it be brought to a working session? And then we're also not on the clock and have some deep discussions.
I'll say we're not on the clock, and here's why I'm just gonna be honest about what I anticipate is coming down the pike in the next couple months with the working sessions. I anticipate OSSI will be back in November, given the graduate profiles work and the health work. And that will probably end up with about at least an hour from OSSI at our next working session. I'm not sure about December, but that's after this thing sunsets. And so I would be concerned about having two in-depth presentations, because with the AI roundtable, what was that? Was that about an hour? At least, it was probably closer to 90 minutes. And I'm just mindful that we're all like humans.
Yes, definitely human. I'm wondering if then could we reverse it? Because I'm guessing OSSI would have some final products related to maybe graduate profile or the standards that they could actually present at a public meeting, and the public could hear it and we can ask our questions there. So maybe a reverse just to accommodate schedules.
I don't quite have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I think I'm just gonna be honest about my worries. I think it's the same worry, right? Because my guess is if we do the cell phones in November, like our public meetings go a decent amount of time, and we've been better about getting public participation. I will say, and I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but I am trying to avoid us starting at 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the evening and going to a 6-hour meeting. I think quite frankly, our meetings have been hovering around in the 9:30 after 10, most of the sessions were just as they are. And I don't want to end up with like public witnesses, especially if we're talking about one panel that really lends itself to public witnesses on there at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, because I've had that experience as a member of the public, and it's not a great one.
Yeah,
And so
I'm curious, President Thompson, if your worry is the rest of the members' worry as well. And then I'll also say, because OSSI would be, we are on the clock with we would have a limited time to discuss in regards to like the standards and those kind of things. So like we would be stopping pretty much at the same time we already stopped if it were to happen in the public meeting. So I'm just curious what the other members feel about moving it to the public meeting.
Yeah, I'm also encouraging other members to chime in, but I'm also just being honest about my own concerns, and I'm encouraging other people to be honest as well. Representative Boulay.
Yeah, I definitely support kind of keeping the traditional approach here. I think having a working session with OSSI to discuss matters as a sister agency makes sense. You know, for me, having the panel on the two issues in November and December, not in one day, makes sense at a public meeting, because it's just a little bit more high profile. You can have an audience there, the public can come and listen. People are more likely to tune into it. And I think that that's just kind of a better approach. I mean, unless we're going to open up this area to the public, I think we should keep it the way it is. And I support your approach, President Thompson, on this.
Other comments?
I mean, I don't know if folks are ready to vote or if people have other suggestions, if someone wants to. But I'm trying to get us to a place where we can take a vote on which one of these is going to be a topic for the public meeting, because that's where we are.
Can we do a motion to close debate and vote?
We can.
All right.
I'm just.
I'll second.
I'm just
All right, I move the
looking.
motion.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, so, you will, let me finish my thought and then interrupt. And then we can, make a decision on what happens with the other topic unless someone would like to say that they do not want their thing at the public meeting.
That's what I'm saying.
Representative O'Leary,
I'd like to pull the cell phones for November
and put it where?
and December.
Okay, so we're just gonna have this same debate about December, because now there are three things, I'm just being honest, there are three things on the tracker for December. So we're still gonna have to figure out what happens where. But you are welcome to do that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, I love a suggestion.
Why don't we just vote on November today? Then our next business meeting, we can vote on December.
We always have the option to do that. Honestly, we have decided as a body that best practice is voting 2 weeks out on all the things. I'm also, 2 months, y'all know what I'm saying. Somebody said August earlier, I let it go. So, we have decided that that is our SOPs and that is our best practice. It also does not necessarily solve the issue though of like just charting our work, right? And so we can do that if that's what the body would like. And if you all want to come back to me with a recommendation about when and how we can talk about cell phones, that's fine.
Well, you still have, you said you have 3, right?
For December, if we add cell phones to this.
Could I make a motion that we only vote on 1 month?
You could, I mean, we could also just talk about, if it's helpful for folks to just get some insight into what's also been put on for December, so we can arrange all the things, that we can do that too. Because I think it is a good problem to have, that folks have as many suggestions as they do.
Yeah, I agree.
But Eric moved to close debate, and so we debate.
Well, we could still debate because nobody voted on the motion.
I know, yeah. I'm just saying I'm just recapping how we got here, this is not.
Great, Robert, rules of order.
All right, so, if that is helpful for folks, I understand, indoor air quality, is also, has also been raised as a possibility for December. I know Representative Williams, is that what you were gonna say?
No,
I didn't think so, okay.
I was thinking of, do something around the budget process. I know from talking to a lot of principals at the beginning of this school year that the disconnect between the executive and the legislative branch, and also just the general challenges with transparency with DCPS led to losing many teachers at many schools and then having to hire teachers back. So I know that schools and the chairman and all of us would love to see stability in our schools. So I was wondering if we could bring in a lot of involved stakeholders to make recommendations as to how we could improve that process.
And then it sounds like we're still trying to figure out if we want to move cell phones to December, or if we want to move one of the other things to December. I was similarly thinking that budget might be helpful in December, just what I know about the budget process. And so if that is helpful for people to know it's been proposed and it's just in the air as over the next 2 months, happy to continue with discussion.
Indoor air quality is mine. I'm happy to move it to a later date. I put it December because that was next available when I signed up.
Thank you, Representative Henderson. All right, that leaves us with 3 topics in 2 months.
I feel strongly about the need to reform the budget process. I've talked a lot about that, but I think that should be an offline discussion first with the council. I think a lot of the problems are with the DC council on the budget process. I think they've approved legislation that they know is legally insufficient with the Schools First and Budgeting Act. I think they've refused to send a letter to the OAG about that because they know the OAG would come back and say it's not legal. And that's why they haven't enforced it. So I think that's misleading the community, and that legislation, I think, has been a big concern of mine because it's creating false expectations. I'd like to see that amended. I also have concerns about the recent timeline of the council's process. I think that the issues that they have addressed with particularly the issue of the spring break, I'm sorry, the winter break being right when the LSATs get the budget could be completely avoided if they would move the budget process later in time. You know, I've written them, they refuse to do that. So I think it would be helpful to kind of maybe have an internal discussion first about this. And then lastly on this, you know, I've been extremely disappointed lately, particularly with Chairman Mendelson, about the lack of oversight from the committee of the whole. I mean, the council voted 11-2 not to recreate an education committee this past year. The committee of the whole has put the three largest, most important education agencies together in a single hearing for the last 2 years, which takes, you know, it used to be you get 3 minutes per agency to discuss important issues at OSSI, the DME, and DCPS, which all have very different and important issues. Now the public only gets 3 minutes to speak on all three of those collectively, which I think is wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong, and it really disenfranchises the public and gives short shrift. So I am interested in a discussion on this. I just don't know what, since a lot of the problems are with the DC Council, what the solution we would have is. I don't want to have a panel just coming in talking about the mayor not implementing the Schools First Budgeting Act, unless we're going to invite the OAG to ask him whether that's a real law. Because it's not. It's just not.
Yeah, I think you went a different direction in this than I think what I was thinking. I was more so thinking about, and I hadn't considered what you're raising, and I'll be transparent. I was more so thinking about how typically, I know DCPS is gonna have their budget forum around the end of November. They always do, and they invite folks to write in what they would like to see in the budget. I know that we are trying and getting increasingly better at doing a budget letter earlier rather than later. And so I was more so thinking about hearing from the public so that we can be better advocates and share with the mayor's office and then also the council earlier things that the public would like to champion in the education budget, less so than interrogating the current processes. And so that was my thought about November and just like hearing from the public as far as like stuff we would want to prioritize, like budget priorities. I know that last year, I think we tried to, my sense of time is really bad. We tried to do a separate budget engagement thing to hear from people to actually to your point about the 3 minutes and all the things, just to create that space for folks. And folks, right. And so I'm thinking about, given we have a standing public meeting, which people know to come to, instead of trying to create a separate space, which also just takes a lot of capacity and work for staff, that was more so my thought with like the budget process. Like, how do we hear from more folks so we can be advocates on their behalf? And I don't know, and I don't want to speak for Representative Williams, but that was my thought. We went a different direction than Representative. I know I went a different direction than Representative Goulet.
Yeah, and I wasn't, I appreciate that. I see and hear where you stand with that, Representative Goulet. I think more around what we want to advocate and making sure that we're prioritizing the right things fits more with my focus right now.
So if I may, I'm gonna support the cell phone thing, because on this specific issue, I feel like what that really is then just listening to the community about their priorities, which I think we do at every hearing. So like, I think that would just be more of a kind of an open mic to come in and speak about what the priorities of this board should be. But I don't think that really requires a specialized panel or something like that. That could just be an invitation that we send out to say, come in and talk about your budget priorities. I just don't see why we need experts on that. If we're talking about, and the road I went down was talking about like process improvements to the budget. I thought that's what we were talking about, because there's been some real transparency issues related to the budget. But if we're just talking about general priorities, I mean, that should just be something that people are open to come and speak about at anything. And I don't think we need an expert panel to come and tell us that. So I would support Representative O'Leary in terms of having the cell phones in December, but maybe put out a call through the staff to have an invitation to come speak on budget priorities.
I like that as a possibility, Representative O'Leary.
When is the meeting with the council
What meeting?
or breakfast or whatever?
It won't be until the 2025.
Oh, but it's before the budget, right?
Well, it will likely be before they receive the budget, but it won't be until 2025.
I thought that, I remember it was.
Last year, we did it in the fall. The chairman said he thinks it is most helpful for us to have the SBOE council breakfast in 2025, because the members of the council are changing.
Oh, right. Well, if we could schedule it early in 2025, then we could get the information at our breakfast with the council. I would hope. If we,
Yeah, I would hope as well. I like, Representative Gray's suggestion of, I think that's as close as maybe we can possibly get, to satisfy all parties, is if we do, maybe an expert panel on cell phones in December and, make a specific call to solicit public feedback around budget priorities. And we can collapse those into one. Does that work for other people, or are there other suggestions?
Is there any way you all can make the call about budget to have those people testify in November? Because if the goal is to get the budget letter to the mayor for December 1st, December probably be too late.
Mhm. Yeah, that was the original intent, and I do hear Representative Goulet's point around it might be best to just message that to the public for public comment. And I think that would be a good shift and accomplish both objectives here of still moving the work for cell phones along while also making sure that we are aligning our budget priorities with the timing of our letter for the budget season.
and that gives all of us a month of ANC meetings too, to mention to the people about that.
You guys love the gift of a month of ANC meetings. So it sounds like November, education as a civil right for a vote, and December, cell phones for a vote, with the expectation that we will explicitly message and encourage folks to testify about budget during the public meeting, especially in November, but possibly at both meetings, because we know some folks are gonna get the message late. Is there anyone who is like opposed to that moving forward as folks? That doesn't like break anyone's heart, does it? All right, so I'm hoping someone can make a motion for the November panel topic.
Make a motion for the November panel topic
To be what?
introduced or voted on.
Say what it is.
Civil rights.
So sorry.
No, this is a great practice.
So motion for Representative Patterson civil rights panel to be voted on.
Okay.
Second.
Oh, Representative O'Leary, seconded. All right, so all in favor of education as a civil right is the November topic, please say aye. Is anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay, one opposed. All right, motion carried. For December, does someone want to make a motion on the December panel topic?
I'd like to make a motion that we have cell phones in the classroom as the topic.
All right, is there a second? Perfect, it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor on cell phones in the classroom as the December public meeting panel topic, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, both motions carried. Thank you. We have decisions made. Representative Henderson look forward seeing indoor air quality at a future meeting.
Follow up, will there be a new document for
Yeah, there's
25?
always a new document. We always create new ones every year.
And follow-up question, do we need to expand the sunset date for Ed as a civil right then?
I'm hoping that we will not, I wouldn't put forth it at this particular time, Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I completely support the topic. I just feel like we're rushing at the meeting, but sure. Cool.
And I can always, And I will forward some of that language that's already been discussed, okay, to you.
All right, we've already taken our break, so, let's keep talking about budget. Every year, the state board writes the letters and advise or convey agency budget priorities for the following fiscal year. I'm going to turn to Director Butler to lead our long-awaited discussion on what the state board would like to prioritize for FY 2026. Director Butler.
So this is a beginning discussion, and not an end discussion. In the email that was shared with you all a week and a half ago on updates, there's a survey in there. It gives you an opportunity to list any topics you would like to see in the budget, letter from the state board. So it is you all's view on what should be prioritized across the education space in the FY 26 budget. So please complete that survey. The deadline is in the email. It was also mentioned in in my BD report. And once we get everyone's thoughts and suggestions in, some may overlap. And then we'll bring back that list at the November meeting. And as soon as you all reply, we'll analyze the results. And then if there are more than 5 or 6 things collectively, then we will send another email out to you all to do ranked choice voting, to vote on those options as we have done for the last 2 years. And from there, we will take the results and the staff will draft based on resolutions that you all have passed over the last year or 2 years to look at language to include in these budget letters around what you would like to advocate for. For example, if school nurses last year was the topic, that letter was included, that topic was included in the FY 25 budget letter. So if that is a topic you all would like to advocate for again, it would show up and we would, again, the staff did research. It is document all of our sources in the letter and we type it up. But the goal is to be able to have that letter ready for you all to review a full draft of before Thanksgiving, so that we can get that letter into the mayor's staff's hand before December 1st. Are there any questions, concerns, suggestions for changes around the process? Thank you, President Thomas.
All right, thank you members, for, the feedback that and recommendations to talk this year. It is much appreciated. I'm now gonna move us on to committee reports. Each committee chair will provide an update, which is followed by any member questions. Per usual, we are going in alphabetical order of our committee name. So I'm coming to admin committee first, Vice President Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to apologize to one of the other committees, because I wasn't able to attend because our meeting ran a little bit long. I tried to text you guys, just to let you guys know, and send one of the members there so you guys could have a forum. So I appreciate that. So we had our meeting on the 27th, from 3 to past 4:15, which we have stated here a little bit long. All our members were, all committee members were in attendance. Our director, our student advocate, and our ombudsman. Some of the highlights, these notes are in your package. The committee discussed the annual evaluation process for the executive director and chief student advocate. Both have been completed, and President Thompson is compiling the results shared with the board members and scheduling one-on-one meetings with them to discuss the feedback shared. The agency is working to resolve cross-office IT Octo challenges centered around Microsoft, Adobe, and other software. And so each office also shared their FY 2026 enhancement requests, but no final decisions, as you just heard, were made. So some of the things that they shared for the Office of the Ombudsman was a special education ombudsman, FTE, admin FTE, and funds for training. For the Student Advocacy Office, multilingual student advocate, FTE. And we also stated, just so you guys know, student advocates said, like last time they took kind of second place to some of the other things that FTE that were requested, and they kind of asked that we kind of push the FTE that they would like, because they've always taken a back seat, so to speak. And then quick base upgrades. And then the State Board of Education, through our director, our constituent service assistant FTE and an education research FTE. All offices, a cost of living increase for all agency staff. And I really appreciate Representative Goulet, who brought a lot of insight into that conversation that we had concerning just how that's done and some ways that we can go about approaching that. So let's see. I think everything else, we have some office updates, which you guys can read here. I won't go line for line item in this, but they're in your report. That's in your package. I'll just say the last thing, as far as actions, the committee asked the executive director to work with the chief student advocate and ombudsman to complete an assessment of weights and positions to see if our agency is on par regarding salaries and growth opportunities for staff. So we mainly, as you can hear, talked about the staff and the things that they need for their enhancement. We all know that we have some of the smallest offices, but they do a lot with what they have, and they need a lot more support, and especially around their salaries because of the way they're structured. They don't get a cost of living increase. And as we know, and we need to advocate strongly with our council members and other individuals, we need to make sure that they're getting a pay raise or something similar, just to keep up with the cost of living. It just doesn't make sense that every year other groups who have unions and stuff like that get increases, but we don't see them getting their increases. That's a major focus for us, and we'll continue to work very hard on that and advocate on their behalf. Madam President, that is my report. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I don't believe, Madam President, report.
All right, thank you, Vice President Patterson. I'm coming to college, career, and life readiness, Representative Henderson.
Thank you. We checked in on a number of running items. So as next steps for the literacy event that we completed, we are going to follow up with participants to remind them to do the survey that was offered after that. Representative Best is continuing to work with the DME's office on AI conversations. We talked about our priorities for the October meeting panel, and we are still working those out. And so I welcome any board members who have ideas about what questions they would like to see answered in the October panel to let us know. And copy Kathleen. And then we voted out a math resolution, which is on the agenda later on. So we'll discuss that more later. And then Representative Best brought an idea to the committee for a civics education week that the committee was interested in pursuing as something that we would look to set up for next year. So this is not a immediate thing. And can I invite him to say more if you'd like to? Would you like to? Sorry.
Sorry, everyone.
Goodness gracious.
I know. Yeah.
Can you sign or can you write it down?
I'll say more. I didn't mean to set up a situation of pain, but I did. So the idea is an annual event, like to establish what would become an annual event for middle and high school students, to enhance student understanding of local and federal government processes, encourage active civic participation, and inspire future leaders. It would be a 1 week span event that would be integrated with social studies classes with different themes for each grade from middle to high school. So this is, an idea that we would begin discussing how to implement, who we would need to work with, and so on. But the committee is interested in taking that.
Other questions for the committee? Run report.
Was there a month in mind for the civics education?
Never.
No.
No.
Okay.
I mean, you got people online. So
To be determined.
Do this, Brandon.
A question, but Representative Best, just email it to me, is can you just remind me what the end goal is of AI, the work? And you don't have to respond right now. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions for that committee, I'm coming to educator excellence. Representative O'Leary, I'm not coming to you.
Yes,
Yeah,
There's a comment about that. There is already a National Civic Education Week March.
thank you for that flag, Representative O'Leary.
okay, I'm not one of those kind of English teachers that talk over what people are looking at. You can all see the notes from our meeting. We were focusing on teacher retention. All of you received a report from the Learning Policy Institute on teacher induction research. I would encourage you to look closely at that. It's filled with a lot of really good information from other states about programs that they have initiated, because we in the city don't have any kind of a general teacher induction policy at all. And so please take a look at that. And I don't know if the student members have gotten that thing, Director Bowler, if they could get that. I think it would be interesting for them to read.
It was before they joined the board, so I will send it to them.
Okay, thank you. We also talked about cell phone usage. We've already done that today. Everyone, all the members were asked to panel their principals in their wards to find out what kind of policies the schools in their wards had. And you can still continue to send that information to me. I appreciate it. So we're going to have the Learning Policy Institute perform a little panel for our next meeting of the Educator Excellence Committee. And so everyone is available to can tune into that. We'll see what we get out of that. But that'll be very interesting, I think. Any questions?
I think it may be helpful from our meeting with BCPS. One of the things that was listed in the meeting notes is that we asked Chancellor Fairby about cell phones, and that they've actually conducted a full pilot and study on cell phone usage in DCPS schools. And that one of the recommendations after the pilot and their own assessment is that they do ban cell phones in all DCPS middle schools. And then they let each high school principal determine on their individual environment whether or not cell phones should be allowed at the high school level. But there is some data there, some research that they've done around cell phone usage to inform their decision.
Thank you.
Any questions for educator excellence? All right, student advisory committee, I believe I'm coming to Representative Mayor.
Yeah, we had a great first student advisory committee meeting. I, Representative Lynn and Representative Barnes were all in attendance, as well as some state board staff members. We had 44 students come in person, which we were all pleased with. We started by talking about phones, as many of us have been lately. We did poll the members. About 60% of students agreed that phones should be allowed at least moderately in schools. 18% supported no restrictions, and only 9% supported complete bans. So we can take that into consideration more as we continue discussing. Representative Barnes also provided a brief orientation about what the roles of committee members would be and what our roles are. Members responded to a Mentimeter prompt about their priorities in education. We heard a lot about diversity and inclusion, equity, accessibility, quality of life, and then the content of education as their priorities. Then Representative Goulet came and talked about SR 24-18, the nursing resolution. Students
Yes.
I would just like to point out that, the data about this, the Mentimeter on the schools, like on kids, students' opinions on cell phones should be available if you contact Darren, I think, for more information.
It's actually in the Dropbox for this meeting, under the student advisory committee report. You'll see both the report and the results.
Yes, awesome.
Thank you. All right, student experience and engagement, Representative Williams.
Yeah, Representative Mayor touched on some of the work that we did with advancing the enhanced school nurse staffing and support work that Representative Goulet has been leading. And some of the main things are around the survey that the committee has been working on and that Darren has been doing a great job leading. The main thing at this point is that the survey is now complete and finalized, and we need to think about distribution. So that's the main point for discussion, and thinking about how we can enact the sampling plan that we've been given to make sure we're reaching the schools that we're intending to. I know that leadership recently met with Chancellor Fairby. I'm wondering kind of what capacity and channels we have as a state board, and then also how we could potentially involve either DCBS, the PCSB, or OSSI to make sure we are, you know, reaching principals and then reaching staff, and then, you know, hopefully also reaching students.
This is also in the notes from the DCPS meeting. Chancellor Fairby expressed an interest in thinking about, given these are students who are not attending school already, how do we get to them? And what tactics might be best employed for that. So we talked to him, we talked to OSSI. We did not have a meeting with DME yet. That is coming up as Bernice and I both led in our reports. And we do not currently have a standing meeting with the Charter Alliance with PCSB. But they all actually did receive the survey and copies of the sampling plan. And that feedback has been coming in. I would say, I believe we pinged OSSI again today for further feedback. So all of that is being compiled and sent to the committee. So you know what they have said about the sampling and the outreach.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we have a variety of, you know, community partners with the outreach outside of the organizations that were named, so it'll be good to incorporate what those three agencies are willing to do to support too. You know, the more direct means of communication, the better, and we're already trying to reach a student population that is, you know, already not coming to school, so the simpler and more effective we can be in getting that into schools' hands, I think the better it'll be.
Other questions for student experience and engagement? All right, members, external committee updates or reports. I have one for community schools. Does anyone else have external committee reports? I see Representative Barnes and Representative O'Leary. So I'm gonna go to Representative Barnes first to get their work.
Yes, so I was recently able to join for the NASB youth student representative Zoom meeting. Okay. And in that Zoom meeting, we were able to discuss a variety of topics from one of the main topics we talked about was the difference between power and influence. Then we went to national trends, mainly giving us a sense of what it's like to step into the role of a student representative. Not specifically focusing on the title itself, but also the label that it would come with. And so, you know, the president was mentioning a lot about, you know, a lot of times we get applause and we get the congratulations, but oftentimes there's more to it than simply that. But he was able to help us break down that. And then he also allowed us, in that meeting, we also was allowed to develop expertise in education and government politics. So we were heavily influenced and motivated to ensure that we get involved more with understanding politics and understanding more about government. So it mainly exposed us more to, you know, this thing that we're in and gave us more in-depth of, what we're supposed to do. And it was, myself and, student representatives from other states, from Virginia, Maryland, all 50 states. So it was a great experience and opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Barnes. Any questions for Representative Barnes?
Actually, when's the next, did they mention when the next meeting is?
They probably did, but I must have not been paying attention.
So I don't know if folks heard that. So for clarification, this is an orientation. So there likely will not be a longer series of meetings, but it's an ASBE orientation for student members, to elected boards. Right, yes, okay. Representative Henderson.
The DC Education Research Collaborative, I'm sorry. You
Oh,
were
I thought
asking
you
me
had
if I had
questions.
questions.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get back in the
No,
queue,
you're in the
sorry.
queue, so then we'll do, I was supposed to come to Representative O'Leary and then Representative Henderson.
I participated in a Zoom call with NASB. And it was pretty interesting representing us because we were meeting with Massachusetts, Delaware, New Jersey, Maine, and Vermont. And I think the thing that came out of, I mentioned this, our students who are full members of the board, and that's not like other states. There are only a couple of states that have students who are members of the State Board of Education. And also, one other thing that came out of that, the representative from Massachusetts and from Delaware, both of their states' reading scores went down this year, which trended differently than it had in the past. So it was kind of interesting to me because our reading scores went up a little, like a niblet, but they went up rather than down. And especially Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is sort of like one of those shining stars in reading scores and things like that, and their scores went down. There wasn't any conversation about why, but I just thought it was interesting to hear about that. We'll probably hear more about that when we go to Louisville next month, or this month.
This month.
Right.
Any questions for Representative O'Leary? All right, those are questions for, we can go to NASB later this month. Representative Henderson.
Sorry.
You're good.
The Education Research Collaborative met earlier this month. They have received a grant from the Department of Education to study career development opportunities for DCPS middle and high schoolers. So that's going to be ongoing work for the next 4 years. We also were brainstorming issues to pursue further. So I would invite members if they have ideas of research projects that the Ed Collaborative could possibly help with, to let me know. They are also working to do more of sharing of research with the broader community. And so we're hoping to facilitate some sharing about the literacy mixer that we did, just to get more people tuned into the work that we're doing.
Is there a deadline for the feedback on topics?
I think it's rolling. It's anytime.
Any other questions for Representative Henderson? All right, happy to give a question.
Yes. Is there an opportunity for staff, and I think this connects, we were talking about IRB review work, for that to be taken to the research practice? Maybe.
Say again what the ask would be?
Around an IRB like review for the research institution report, review about that stuff for the, like the committee, the C committee survey.
Could ask.
They're that organization's listed as a place to get that.
Okay.
It was there in the urban charge is 25 grand. I just assumed that would be the case. With the resale practice, exactly. But we need the name, right, over to you.
All right, other questions that I did not see?
I just have an external committee.
Report?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the Everyday Counts Task Force is continuing to meet. I think I've been added to the steering committee. I think Representative Mayor has also been added. The city is looking for charter school students to be added to the committee. If you're interested, or other students, we should message, they need a charter school teacher and a charter school student to be a part of that committee. And then on top of that, there's an upcoming summit which which people should have been made aware of on October 16th. That's looking at walking out of that summit with clear roles for different agencies on this work, but also what the focus of the work ahead should look like.
Yes.
Just like to follow up on that, I have a lot of charter school friends, like, obviously I go to charter schools, we have like 600 kids there.
Yeah.
Like how would you recommend I like describe this if I were to, you know, hypothetically put this in an Instagram story?
It's good question. I mean, even practically, there is if you go to the Everyday Counts Task Force website, which is you type in Everyday Counts, like it's from the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education. And they will have an application link on that site to be able to apply. And then there's a point person, Carlo, who people should reach out to if they'd like to ask any questions or to apply directly if the link isn't still on the website.
I found it, thank you very much.
What I think is the final external committee report, so, the Community Schools Advisory Group, I think I mentioned previously, has been reconstituted, and for a very specific purpose. Pretty much all of the meetings are about how we protect funding, for different streams of funding for community schools. At our last meeting, there was a lot of energy around folks, helping support their organizations in doing advocacy. So one of the things that I propose as a committee member is just to have an advocacy day around this, because people already have messaging, they already have messaging, they already have people. Many of these are the folks who signed up to the rally around community schools. They just need somebody to help with logistics to say like, oh, you actually have a meeting with a council member, because that's the part that people haven't done before. There is no date for this yet. It would be either very late in 2024 or early in 2025 with the possibility of both. But I will keep board members posted as far as any decisions the committee makes around this and opportunities for engagement from the board around community schools in particular. Happy to answer questions folks have. All right, hearing none. I want to thank everybody for external committee reports and internal committee reports. And I'm gonna move us along to new business. Here's what I already have on items for new business. I have updated 2025 board calendar. SR 24-22, appointing Brandon Beth to the DC Math Task Force. SR 24-3, approving fiscal year 2026 need for appropriations and enhancement. SR 24-24, recommending actions to improve mathematics performance in the District of Columbia, excuse me. SR 24-25, restricting artificial turf in the District of Columbia schools. And CR 24-7, honoring the late Mary Lee Pease. Are there other items that folks would like to add to new business? Representative Goulet.
Could I add a discussion of legacy admissions legislation, and I will keep it brief.
Yes. Representative Henderson.
A follow-up on the discussion around legislation for expanding board authority that Representative Williams brought up last month.
And I'm also gonna add, my legal academy, hearing letter. Anything else? All right, let's get started. Updated 2025 state board meeting calendar, Director Butler.
So in your folders, you will find, we shared with you all in August, the 2025 meeting calendar. Based on your feedback, we have made some changes. First being we've moved the public meeting in April to April 23rd. We have decreased and removed the public meeting from July. So, July 2nd will be the working session in July, but there'll be no public meeting. We added a public meeting to August instead, which will be August 20th. We have also been moving, you will know, it feels like there are 3 meetings in September. There is a 3rd meeting in September on September 30th, but October 1st and October 2nd, which come after September 30th, are Yom Kippur. And so we have moved those to the Tuesday, so literally just one day switch in that direction. But if you have any additional feedback or changes on the schedule, to let us know. If not, we will be finalizing this and for administrative vote at the October meeting.
I would just like to add, this is unintentionally like, just like, I don't know if this is much, it's really good for, so APs are in May, the first 2 weeks of May, and the student advisory committee meeting would be after that. So that's.
I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Okay, so, and then so like, so that is great for like our SAC attendance, because it would be after all their exams. So I would just like to like, awesome.
So no changes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I want to just reiterate, take some time to look at the calendar. If you have changes, send emails, so we can make it. SR 24-22 appointing, Brandon Bass to the DC Math Task Force. We got an email about this. OSSI, is also, part of our discussion. The last leadership meeting, I sent an email to everyone, about this, and the person who raised their hand was Representative Best. And so I would encourage us to appoint Representative Best to this committee. The committee has already started meeting, and so we are a little delinquent in our appointment, but that doesn't make it any less of a strong appointment. Is there any discussion around this agenda item?
Is Representative Best gonna have a voice?
They also accept email. Oh, his actual voice.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Come on.
I thought it was very funny. He was very funny. I'm gonna follow that up with SR 24-23, approving fiscal year need for appropriations and enhancement. Director Butler, we're coming back to you.
All right, in this resolution, so this resolution may be moved to November. The mayor has not released their budgeting paperwork, but we did reach out to our budget contact in the mayor's office. And they said that it would be very, not exactly the same to last year's process, but there are new forms. And so, at the admin meeting, which we shared earlier, there were some suggestions of things. But last year, we were limited to only 3 for the agency, not per office. So there will have to be an additional set of discussions at the October admin meeting about which or how we will arrange things to come to those exact number of 3 things to include in the highlighted portion here on line 30 of the resolution. But everything that you see in here around in lines 26 through 28 were shared with you all at the August working session.
Questions, comments, discussion? All right, hearing none, I'm gonna move us along. SR 24-24, recommending action to improve mathematics performance in the District of Columbia. I believe we're coming to you, Representative Hutchinson. Perfect.
Yes, thank you. So this work started with an earlier iteration of a math resolution beginning of the year, informed further by our June panel on math. I had discussions with Josh Boots, with DCPS and some of the follow-up conversations with the panelists. And the resolution tries to do a couple of things. One is to just highlight some of the best practices that were lifted up by the panelists, as well as the reports, the report that Empower K-12 did, and some of the other work that the panelists of the organizations the panelists represent. We also make some general recommendations of priorities to have math instructional coaches for every school who have math subject expertise. Because in some cases, a math coach is somebody who has been identified as the math coach, but they may not have subject matter expertise in math. And also to prioritize math PD opportunities for math instructors. And then it also calls for the creation of an OSSI-administered math support fund that LEAs would then apply for grants to address math performance. And OSSI would, determine the parameters of what types of activities they would award grants to. Also to fund the Dream Center, which is a portion of the capital campaign, I think they call it DCPS strategic plan. Outlined a Dream Center, but it was not funded in the last cycle, so the resolution asks for funding for that. And then finally, it concludes with just framing math performance in connection to a lot of the other issues that we have weighed in on in the past, including teacher retention and absenteeism. Just tries to note those, and perhaps we would want to revise, because it does also mention timely completion of a contract with WTU, but maybe we can revise that.
All right, comments, questions, discussion? I apologize for not having looked beforehand. Is the task force mentioned in the resolution at all?
No.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, yes,
Sorry. Yes, it is mentioned. And we will. The reason I said no is that we kind of stepped away from that as an ask or as a priority. And then independently of that, OSSI created the task force. But yes, it now names the person we will put.
Move from the resolve section to the. One of the things that's wrong with the math task force, we did ask, and I think we're waiting for an answer from OSSI, is with the literacy task force, given that was legislated, there were specific seats that were required. That's not true for this, because this is of OSSI design. What I don't know is if there are any, like, who is the full makeup of the math task force, and if there are any, I don't know if community is the right word, but other stakeholder groups that are not like LEA representatives, government representatives, that are on this task force or should be on the task force, because that was I think missed opportunity with the literacy last go around. And so I want to follow up with to get a clear answer, and if we want to encourage broader stakeholder participation, maybe that's the resolution.
Yeah, well, I just learned about the task force like 2 weeks ago, so And we had already kind of deprioritized having a task force because we feel like we have enough to go on already. But now that there is a task force, we could go back to that and express an urging for members, yeah. Would you be able to get the answer from Marcy on?
I'd be able to try that. If there is nothing else.
When is the next meeting of the task force? Do you know?
Not really stretching my brain sense capacity, but we will find out for you. Yeah. Yeah, we'll find out. If there's nothing else on this SR, I'm gonna move us along. SR 24-25, restricting artificial turf in the District of Columbia. I believe I'm coming to Representative Mayor, because I don't see Representative Chang online. Yeah. Okay.
So I, over the summer, as Representative Chang's intern, was instructed to research and draft this resolution, which is a very rough draft, so don't be too critical. The main concerns with artificial turf have to do with health concerns and environmental concerns. There is a very dedicated community in especially Ward 3 and Chevy Chase with Chevy Chase Boys, who are very concerned about artificial turf and its presence in schools, which, as I did research, proved to be a valid concern. Artificial turf generally contains the chemical group called PFAS, which are known to cause cancer, cause hormone imbalance, can impact immune system development, which I think we can all agree are generally pretty bad outcomes, especially when kids are being exposed. The issue is exacerbated through the engagement of chemical companies, and the Attorney General of DC has already filed a lawsuit on these companies producing these chemicals, and there is not sufficient research that I was able to find or really believe exists on whether these chemicals are present in the turf, because the district isn't doing the testing that they're supposed to be doing as per the health advisory groups who recommend the testing. In addition to that, with environmental concerns, the chemicals leach into runoff, which then gets into the rivers, which is obviously bad. They also are heat islands because, like, the artificial materials and chemicals and whatnot attracts sunlight and heat, leading to heat islands in schools, which is one of the worst places for heat islands to be. So I am concerned by this. I don't think that it should be #1 priority, but I think that it should definitely be considered, especially through the lens of doing more research and getting more information from OSCE and DCPS, which we talked a little bit about at the student engagement or experience committee. So yeah, I'm open to thoughts. I'm not super dedicated or attached to this resolution, though I think it should be discussed more and is important.
I see Representative Dubay trying to jump in.
Well, I didn't want to jump in. I wanted to make sure you finish your.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to start by thanking Representative Mayor for her leadership on this. I think there's a lot of really important considerations in this resolution that we should really look at and study more. I mean, the issue of the PFAS you raised, I think is really important to look at the long-term implications of that. I think also I really like that you talked about the annual testing to make sure that the synthetic turf fields have the shock absorption. I think that's extremely important as well. But I do want to put some concerns on the record, and then I will move a motion to recommit after all members have had an opportunity to speak on this, to send it back to the committee to continue to work with Representative Mayor and the committee chair on this issue some more, because I do think there's some outstanding concerns with it, and I'll go through those right now. My first concern is that with the heat index numbers that we have here, it's significantly stricter than Montgomery County. They have a heat index rating that here, prohibits use on the field from 12 to 5 to 1 hour with water breaks every 20 minutes. prohibiting that activity from proceeding. Further, I'm really concerned about the issue of, in the resolutions here where we talk about not replacing fields that are either unsafe because they've reached the end of their useful life, or adding new fields, and then eventually it calls for getting rid of all fields in here. And I just want to kind of speak back to what we saw before we added these turf fields, and that was that most of these fields had no grass at all. Parents had come to the mayor's office to complain about the fact that the fields were really unfit for play because they couldn't keep grass on them because of the high demand for the fields. I mean, we live in a city, we don't live in the suburbs, we don't live in a rural area. So there's really high use of these fields, often 10 to 12 hours per day where people are on the fields. If you have a grass field, even with the best maintenance, you're really only gonna be able to put 2 hours max on that field if you're playing football or playing soccer, which will really tear the fields up. So what will end up happening is all the community use of the fields, all the youth sports, and all the use during phys ed periods would be restricted, and really we'd just be able to use them for varsity football and varsity soccer practices, and that would be it. And I think that's a real loss for community recreational activities. I do really want to commend the look at this, and I would like to also focus on the issue of what we did with Play DC, which was with Play DC, there was a real focus at the time on ADA issues. So they added the rubber surfacing to all of our elementary school playgrounds, almost across the city at that point. And now we're seeing that perhaps there may be some side effects to that, where, particularly youth at the pre-K stage who may put their hands in their mouth still, it could be getting this rubber coating in their mouth. I think that's where we should be focusing the efforts, because the studies haven't shown compellingly that there's any long-term health consequence from any of the turf fields at all. I think they've expressed concern about some of the chemicals that are in the fields, but not that that's causing long-term health implications. And if we are to see those health implications, we're much more likely to see them on our elementary school playgrounds, where children are more likely to put their hands in their mouths. So I think that should be the focus. I don't want to take anything away from the hard work you put into this, or that Representative Chang has. I think it really is an excellent start to this, and it brings up issues that we should be looking at. But after all the members have spoken, and maybe we'll have a second round, then I will like to move a motion to recommit so the committee can keep working with Representative Mayer to bring a product back to the board that we can then advance forward to a public meeting. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Representative Boulay. Other thoughts? Representative O'Leary, and I see Representative Henderson. Did I miss anyone? Representative Reed, in that order.
I started coaching 50 years ago, and there were no turf fields in DC. And the fields were used, they were still used 7 days a week by the community. Now I went to a football game at a youth football league plays on Roosevelt football field from 10 o'clock until 7 o'clock every Saturday. And it's fabulous for them. These are not just school fields, they're community fields. And I think that the focus needs to be on playgrounds, to make sure the playgrounds are safe for those little kids. The Representative Goulet was talking about, I live right across from a playground. Kids are falling off the slides, kids are falling off the swings, off the jungle gyms, but they're landing on a soft surface. This resolution talks really well about supervision of the fields and making sure that the city takes care of those fields that have some kind of cancer producing chemicals or whatever. So I think that we need to focus on making the supervision correct rather than getting rid, because the last thing on the resolution set number 7778 calls for the eventual removal of all artificial turf in the district. And that would be so counterproductive for sports and other activities on those fields, that it would be ridiculous in my point of view. So, but I think the resolution has a lot of things on it that can really work. I just don't think that the removal of artificial turf is a positive move.
So easy for me to say, but I think because this would require more work, but it would be great to have some guidance on alternatives. And for that guidance to consider the environmental impact of whatever those alternatives might be. I just don't know what is possible, what exists.
Representative Reed.
Yes, same. Thank you, Representative Meyer, for introducing the topic. Because at least has us thinking, and I agree with, I think, with some of the colleagues are saying to zoom out a bit to kind of encompass like our thing, are all the recreational playgrounds as well as fields are safe. Like I appreciate Representative Goulet saying, yes, we want to consider what materials are, but then also are those materials safe? Like I appreciate the comment relating to cushioning underneath those items, because I think that enhances definitely like the safety. And also considering like if we say no to AstroTurf, I'm just wondering like would then people decide to, put grass and then enhancers to make sure grass grows at a rate that we actually can have students play. So, maybe definitely looking at a bigger scope. And in that bigger scope, I think was it Representative O'Leary hitting on like the rubbering of playgrounds. I know when I visit a lot of playgrounds here in Ward 8, there are frequently potholes and pockets and they're torn up. So maybe in the resolution thinking about, are those materials not only just safe, but then as they're wear and tear, like how are we preventing injuries, accidents, when those items are used? And I also have a couple of contacts for you. I have a former professor who was on a Missouri school board for a district that's in an urban area. And she said she researched so much about, they took up this issue before. And then also I have a really good friend who did his dissertation on heat islands. And at the time I thought was really random, and it's just cool to have a full circle moment. So thank you for raising the issue.
Other thoughts? I would second Representative Henderson's idea about what alternatives could be. I think that's a good one, a good suggestion. And I think it kind of aligns with Representative Goulet started with the possible motion to recommit to committee. If there are no other thoughts for the full board. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative C.
Just to put something on everyone's radar, I know like cushioning and like safe playgrounds with the jungle gyms and all that, like I grew up on that stuff. Or just to put it on everyone's radar, there was I think, let me see, 2017, there's a literature review, 2015, there's a literature review, I think New Zealand of 21 papers. And that there was a movement like 2019, there's a New York Times article. Apparently, certain playgrounds with okay, so apparently playgrounds with less cushioning make kids more careful and therefore result in less accidents. Apparently also it teaches them to be more careful because if they fall, they learn to not fall again. That's just to put it on radar because like I don't know, like the New York Times article is like talking about how these kids are like sawing off the parts of a keyboard and like building little houses with tires and mattresses. Honestly, I think that's a little bit intense. But just put on, like, there is like literature saying that maybe the safer playgrounds are less safe somehow.
Yeah, and to clarify, I was talking about for cushioning, particularly for athletic fields, for like the sports. And there's probably literature that we just need to get rid of certain sports in entirety too. But that was what I was going for the cushioning.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have properly cushioned this topic.
Well, I, at this point, then move a motion to recommit to committee at this time. So moved.
I'll second it. All in favor of sending this back to the committee, given the things we've heard in discussion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carried. I am moving us forward now to CR 24-7, honoring the late Mayor Levy. This is the resolution that I asked for us to postpone a month, solely for the purpose of, Mary Lee's family to be in attendance. So because that was their request. You already have it with you all. I don't know if there are any final last minute additions or, I know there are many great things that folks want to say about, Mary, but this is that resolution, so, I'm assuming there won't be a bunch of discussion given it was on our agenda to be approved earlier, but there are some last minute, additional accolades we want to add that is on the table as well.
Just a question, if we can go ahead and put in our public meeting agenda where we want it to fall, because in the past, sometimes we've moved CRs so that a family can be present and then leave. So I don't know. Yeah, if we want to do that, if we can do it on the front end.
Yeah, I'll find out, thank you for, flagging that, I'll find out if, what time you're planning. Other thoughts? All right, now, legacy admissions, Representative Goulet.
Yes, I'll be fast, given the lateness of the hour. So just a really exciting update, and then move a motion or request. So the state of California just came out and has banned legacy admissions, which is really huge. That's fantastic news. And I think they've now set the kind of the gold star standard for where we ought to be. Now on the DC front, we passed a resolution as the State Board of Education to get rid of legacy admissions. We gave a small exception for universities that had a certain number of Pell Grants already that they were providing. And we had a draft bill at the time that we were hoping that council would introduce based on our resolution. We circulated that bill. I think unfortunately we had a lot of interested co-sponsors at the council when the advocates went to them, but no one, if they want to take a step out there and introduce. So what I would like to do is recirculate the bill to members with any edits based on the California statute, because that I think now has kind of set the nation standard on it. And then if the members are willing to send this back to the committee, this issue back to committee, which was Representative Henderson's committee. I really enjoyed working with him on this issue the last time, but the intent would now be to move the resolution to transmit the legislation that we had circulated before to council. So I would ask if the members are willing, we'll circulate the legislation again. But that if we could send this issue to committee, because I would like the committee to weigh in on it. I just don't want to move it straight to the vote, even though we've discussed it extensively and have circulated the bill. I think it would be appropriate to send to committee. So I don't know if that's the appropriate motion at this time, but if we could move the issue to committee, and then I would reach out to Representative Henderson and recirculate the bill so all members could see it again, and would work with him on any edits that we think are valuable based on California's monumental action on this issue.
So I'm just gonna speak freely. I don't mind this going back to committee. I think this is one of the reasons I was like, oh, okay, in my leadership report, I think we're gonna have the staff kind of make some recommendations. We actually don't have guidance around legislation and like what steps we want to take as a board before we ask for a proposal. But I don't, if the committee is the place where we can start to get some work done around this before we do anything to refer, I understand that. But we don't have guidance. We just, if that makes sense, because I just want to be straight.
And I want to just agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I think the Uniform Law Commission could be a great model to look at, where they transmit legislation. They meet as a body similar to us. They circulate the legislation ahead of times, and then they move amendments to it, vote on it. And I think here, we would want to go first to the committee with the expertise on it. I don't ever want to avoid a committee process on this. And then after we would get a committee vote on the bill, then bring it forward to the body and make sure that we had a full vote of the members. And I think one thing that's really important is if we are going to transmit legislation, it's got to be by vote of the membership. So the membership is voting on the actual bill so that the membership can move amendments to the legislation. And it's not just done in a private session. It's got to be done in public, with a full vote and with the full process. So with the support of the membership, I'd like to work on this issue with the committee. If that's okay with you, then Madam President.
Other thoughts? Representing.
I just have a question. Does this just only affect like EDC?
I know this would be for all public and private universities in the District of Columbia. So the legislation California passed prohibited this at all public universities and all private universities in the state. So we can't do that as a board, but the DC Council could do that. So what we would be doing is introducing legislation as a state board that would then be transmitted to DC Council, and then they could take up that bill. So we essentially have the power as a body of almost like a independent agency, like you'd see with the Attorney General, the CFO, and even the mayor has the ability to introduce legislation through the chair. So as an independent agency, we can introduce a bill, but we have to then formally approve it first. And then it would go to council to consider through their legislative process.
Representative Henderson.
Do we have any estimate on the timeline to develop that process for? Because I don't want us to be slowed down too much by, like, I agree that we need that process, but I don't wanna. So
Yeah, so this is why I said, I personally am not opposed, and I was just speaking as a member, not as a decision, that I'm not opposed to this going to committee to start the work, but reminding folks that the recommendation should be coming forth at the November working session. Just to give people a sense of timing.
Yes. And if I may ask Representative Henderson, I might put you on the spot, but do you know when the next committee meeting is that you would have yet? Has that been scheduled or is it still in the works?
it's scheduled for,
October 18th, that's a week earlier than normal because everyone, for a bunch of people that have the.
Okay, so I need to move expeditiously then. Okay, October 18th, I'll get you a draft expeditiously. And we already have one ready because it was circulated earlier, but I'll revise quickly.
So if the committee is fine with it, are you on that committee, Representative Boulay?
No, I was a special guest, so I'm not officially a member, but they invited me last time to speak, so I would love to come for another meeting. I was not able to vote on it though, committee, just to speak.
Got it. I was just trying to represent, like, I don't need to do anything if you are, but happy to refer it to the committee. What's next? Board authority. So we're calling.
yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to revisit that, because I don't know where we stand on that. If that is gonna go to a committee or how we can proceed.
So this is one of, I don't have a decision. So this is one of the reasons that I asked us to look at a proposal, especially because we had a committee on this, which sunset and has already made a recommendation to the board. And I was like, so we then refer a new committee. I did talk with the chairman offline, and he essentially said, yes, he heard that and that he's made his decisions about hearings for the fall, but as he always says, he will be open to hearings. So I am not sure that he has the same sense of urgency for the fall, honestly, that was conveyed. But I do want us to think about what this looks like. I haven't made a decision though, and I did not get from the chairman that he needed something by a certain date. And so I was trying to think about, this is one of the reasons I was like, I think we need a process for moving legislation. That's my update. My update is the conversation and the proposal.
So what is the pathway forward?
I have not recommended a pathway forward. I'm trying to create a pathway forward. Do you have a suggested pathway forward?
Just referring it to committee. So you're saying you're waiting for the November process?
Yeah, I was gonna wait for the November process. I don't know if there's because I'm not even sure where this would fit in a committee. That's the other reason I was like, we need other pathways. But I'm, again, open to suggestions, because where would this fit? I didn't have a nice place to put it in a committee either. Is it on this? Okay. I was trying to create a neat vehicle. Happy to discuss further, but that I'm trying to create something that makes sense, given we already had a full committee.
Yeah, I kind
And
of
I
feel,
don't really have a neat place to put it.
yeah. Kind of feel like it would be too much to make a non-ad hoc committee just for this,
I agree.
but, I think it's important, so even if it doesn't fit right, like, if a committee can take it up, it's sort of, it doesn't fit in anything, but it's kind of for everybody, so. I think it could go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to just put it anywhere. I'm happy to discuss further, but that's why I did not just refer it to a committee, because it doesn't fit neatly. I don't have a SOP or something to rely on to say here's what we're gonna do. And so then I came up with, this is a proposal, given we are, and I didn't want to just establish an ad hoc committee. And so that is, I didn't have a better thing to offer. I'm also happy to take the discussion offline with some members and come up with a better proposal. But I did do what I said I was going to do, which was follow up with the chairman. Representative O'Leary, what was your other thing?
Just to remind everyone that the city council hearing on the nurses is on October 9th. And if you haven't signed up to testify, I would encourage you to do so.
Did we introduce our bill formally? I assume it was today that it got introduced?
We're going to transmit it shortly.
Okay, so it hasn't been transmitted yet.
Is that our resolution?
Yeah, with the legislation for introduction, because it would be good to get that at least introduced prior to that hearing, which is on the 9th, I think. So at least it could be discussed and council would have it then, because I mean, that bill that's up for hearing, I think, a good start, but it's very inadequate. So I think we want to at least have our bill on the table is what the best practice should be on this, not 30 hours a week of nurse coverage. And a continuation of the floating model. Like, I think that's not what people want. So I don't know what is our timeline for our transmittal, do we know?
I don't think.
Are you talking about the legislation language?
Yes.
Or just the actual resolution itself?
The legislation.
The legislation, because we approved the memo and the transmission of the legislation on the nurses.
We approved, so we voted at our public meeting, both on resolution and language on the legislation. What we did not say was like a timeline for when it would be transmitted. We need to transmit it. There's nothing that prevents us from transmitting it sooner rather than later. So let's just go and get it transmitted tomorrow. I think one of the things that I think is important, it's just like a window, right? Like, so saying, like, if we pass something, we want to transmit it to council in this amount of time. As we think about like some SOPs around this, so we just need to go ahead and transmit it. It's fine. We don't have.
Well, I guess it's what I'm confused, is like, I thought a few months ago, it says we're not transmitting legislation to get it into the process. So when you're saying legislation, are you saying?
We already passed this though.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
That's what I just want to clarify that, because I was under the impression that we're not gonna transmit the nursing like real language until after we've established a process and we include that. I mean, we've shared resolutions before with the council, and that's not, so, but we're saying we're gonna send this legislation absent of the process.
Yeah. So,
Because we, I mean, like, we said things in the past, we passed it for this hearing.
Right.
And that was part of the discussion, so I don't wanna go back and say, we're not gonna pass it, like, we're not gonna transmit it any longer when we've already passed it. But I am asking us not to transmit anything else until we have a process. I am asking that. That doesn't mean we can't keep work going, and it doesn't mean that we can't honor our commitments that we've established.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. I don't think it's fair if we move one without a process and then hold on other things. And that's just my opinion. I think we can keep moving and develop a process.
It's also very important because the council's bill is talking about 30 hours a week.
Yeah,
And our bill is talking, we have to, that's what I'm gonna be talking about.
right. But we've already passed this.
Right.
And so like, I'm literally identifying holes. We don't have anything, like, we didn't say we're gonna transmit it by a certain date. We also don't have a process or anything, but there was an understanding that we're gonna transmit it.
Right.
So we should transmit it.
Yeah.
We'll figure out. And it should probably mirror what we did for governance, when we sent that email. It's just as simple, I think, as sending an email.
I don't know if that's the official introduction of legislation.
We don't have anything like that. There is no guidance, and so we need to create it. That's the problem, is we actually don't have anything. But we also can't control when the hearing is. We can talk about some of this offline, but that's the problem.
We should also be limiting the amount of stuff that we're talking about offline. It's public information. So I also want to insert that.
Yeah, we can discuss it. Representative Goulet.
Yeah, I think, one thing that'll be helpful on this is we included with the approval of the bill, like a transmittal memo like we did the last time. So the way to transmit the legislation would be, for either the president or executive director to sign the transmittal letter. In this case, we did it as executive director on behalf of the board, since the president voted along with the membership to introduce it. So the executive director has a memo that we approved when we directed the transmittal of the legislation. And I think the process we're talking about now is how do we move these, from start to finish through SBOE? And I think not that we've already had one that's kind of past that point. We've directed the transmission like we did the last time. So we should move that forward so we can, Representative O'Leary, myself, and others can talk about the bill we've introduced since before the council when that hearing takes place. But I do agree with you, President Thompson. It's good to have a process as standard operating procedure for future ones so that we can follow that process. So I think we can do both, and definitely looking forward to working with you on creating that process and then figuring out a way where members can do these bills, because I think it's going to be a good power our board can utilize to kind of grow our agency. So thank you for your leadership on this, and look forward to working with you on it.
No worries. Thank you for the friendly reminder so that we get it done in a timely fashion. Eagle Academy letter. So I believe some members have already signed on to a letter that's been circulated that's going to the chairman asking for a hearing around what happened with Eagle Academy's charter revocation. I'm happy to forward that to other members via email if they want to sign on as individuals. I know in the past, we have signed on to letters, it's listed everybody's name who wants to sign on. I also know that there's already been some commentary from the board on this. So just want to flag that as in something that will be in you all's inboxes. If folks do want to make a decision that we would also like to send a member as a board, we can consider that as well. I'm open to that as well, but wanted to at least extend that opportunity, given I know members have had concerns about it and have already gone on the record. Questions, comments, thoughts?
So we'll get that today?
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
I think that is the last thing on new business. Are there any announcements before we adjourn?
Is there something about the Mary Levy resolution or no?
We already talked about that. The only thing that would be different is possibly where we put it in the agenda. Other announcements? All right, I have one October 10th, student advocate is leading a meeting. It will be in Ward 7 on youth safety. That is October 10th at Benny Starter Recreation Center. I believe the start time is 6 p.m. If folks would like to attend or would like to direct members of the public that way. If no one else has announcements, I'm completely happy with that. And I want to thank all of our members for their time and engagement tonight. Did you have an announcement before we adjourn? I see a hand motion.
I want a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I got that. Go ahead. Provide testimony in person or virtually via Zoom. All public witnesses must submit a written copy of their testimony to our staff for public record. Members of the public can visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit and present testimony. Seeing no further business before the board, I would now like a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Representative Teen, is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's second and third, all in favor, please, come in now, adjournment, aye. Any opposed? All right, anybody else think about this bill? 8:32 PM, this meeting of the October State Board of Education.